Chapter 933. Originally, the Emperor of the Eastern Wilderness, the desolate demons, and the sea gods' realms weren't limited to the spirit realm. However, after entering the Eastern Wilderness, they were all restricted to the spirit realm. During the war, they weren't able to display their original realms. Otherwise, the entire Eastern Wilderness would have been destroyed by them. The reason why the Eastern Wilderness allowed soul amalgamation realm cultivators was because Qian-Zi wanted to turn the Eastern Wilderness into his own base. He plundered the origins of various small dimensions and injected them into the Eastern Wilderness's origin, causing the Eastern Wilderness to become stronger. This caused the laws of the heavens and earth to change and the restrictions to change. Such extravagance! Chu Yang's mind trembled violently. This so-called Eastern Continent's Qian-Zi was simply managing his own small world. Such a person was definitely an extremely powerful existence. He had gotten himself into trouble, and it was a huge trouble. Fortunately, the Eastern Wilderness had a restriction of realms. If Qian-Zi dared to barge in, Chu Yang was confident that he could kill him. However, he still felt a sense of urgency and pressure. I have to increase my realm immediately. It wasn't difficult for Chu Yang to increase his realm. He already had the divine demon body and had cultivated the 9 basic elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, light, and darkness. It wasn't difficult for him to cultivate the 8 divine demon bodies and the 8 demon bodies of the 8 great god clans and 8 great demon clans. The only obstacle was his divine demon martial soul. Everything would be controlled by his divine demon martial soul. Therefore, as long as his divine demon martial soul increased and he had enough energy, he could instantly complete everything and reach the 8th level of the soul reincarnation realm. He could even reach the peak of the 9th level of the soul reincarnation realm. Chu Yang's realm had jumped out of the system because of the Destiny Twins' martial souls. Plunder crazily. After killing the 2 of them, Chu Yang continued to fly around the Wei Nation's imperial palace and took out the Yin-Yang 4 symbols vase. He activated his divine demon martial spirit and an endless suction force burst out. Elixirs, swords, divine weapons, and other treasures of the Wei Nation's imperial palace were all sucked into it. In just an instant, the countless treasures, elixirs, treasures, and resources of the Wei Nation's imperial palace were all swept clean. Many of them were directly analyzed by the celestial demon martial spirit and turned into materials for creation. This was a huge amount of resources. Just think about it, the Wei country had ruled for many years and ruled over a huge territory. How much wealth did they have? However, there were many materials, treasures, and pellets that Chu Yang's celestial devil martial spirit couldn't use, but he could give them to his father, big brother, and the others. It was more than enough for Chu Yang to build up his own team and unify the Eastern Wilderness. He already had this thought in mind. The East Continent's Qian-Zi hoped to make the Eastern Wilderness into his base camp. This gave Chu Yang a hint. The Eastern Wilderness could be his final resting place. Rumble. The wealth was secondary. The Wei Nation's dragon vein was the most precious. Chu Yang directly took out the dragon vein under the Wei Nation's imperial palace and handed it to the celestial demon martial spirit. Whoosh. After that, Chu Yang directly left. He had already learned the whereabouts of Jun Tianhen and Jun Tianqiu from the memories of the Wei Nation's retired emperor, the prime minister, and the state preceptor. At this moment, the 4 emperors of the 4 nations, the demon kings, and the others were gathered together and bargaining with the people sent by the Qian-Zi. The entire Wei Nation's imperial palace had been ransacked. After Chu Yang completely left, some people woke up after a while. They looked at the devastated Wei Nation's imperial palace and looked at each other. The Wei Nation will be in chaos. The Eastern Wilderness will be in turmoil. Who will rule the Wei Nation in the future? No matter what, the Wei Nation's retired emperor is dead. The Wei Nation will definitely be annihilated. Chapter 934. The 4 emperors of the 4 countries, the Gold Rock King, the Lion King, the Tiger King, the Three-Eyed King, as well as the Sea Demon City's City Lord, the descendants of the Eastern Wilderness's great emperor, Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu, had agreed to meet the people from the East Continent on an island. This island wasn't far from Sea Demon City, but it was an island created by someone else, and it was erratic. Chu Yang was very clear about the strength of the people from the Eastern Wilderness. Other than Jun Tianchou, who was at the Soul Amalgamation Realm, and Wei Country's Grand Emperor, who was at the Half-Step Soul Amalgamation Realm, no one else had stepped into the Soul Amalgamation Realm. However, Chu Yang didn't know how strong the people from the East Continent were. Chu Yang was most afraid of the people from the East Continent. If the people from the East Continent were too strong, then it would be troublesome. Unless he immediately broke through to the Soul Reincarnation Realm. To Chu Yang, the Soul Reincarnation Realm wasn't called the Soul Reincarnation Realm because he didn't need to condense the soul of the Soul Reincarnation Realm. Once he broke through, there would be no pressure to assassinate a Soul Amalgamation Realm expert. However, Chu Yang couldn't break through in the Eastern Wilderness now, but this didn't limit him. As long as his divine devil martial spirit improved, his battle strength would also increase. Not long ago, he plundered the Wei Country's imperial palace, seized the Wei Country's dragon vein, and used the divine devil martial spirit to create an illusory kingdom of light and kingdom of darkness. These two turned from illusion to reality, and with the addition of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning, he could instantly cultivate the remaining 8 divine physiques and 8 devil physique. The 2 elders by Chu Yang's side had the deepest impression of Chu Yang's change, and they were even more shocked. In their eyes, Chu Yang was no longer a human. The acupoints and organs in his body were like an abyss that devoured everything. He was like a bright sun that emitted endless rays of light. When the spiritual energy surged, it was as if thousands of gods and devils were flying. It was as if heaven and earth were breathing. His body was filled with divinity and demonic nature. Sometimes he was like a god, sometimes he was like a demon. His body was like hell, but it was also like heaven. He could switch between the two and walked between heaven and hell, controlling everything in heaven and hell. Gods and demons were all under his command. They also sensed that Chu Yang's aura had already risen to the 5th level of the soul circulation realm in this short period of time, since they left the Wei Imperial Palace. This caused them to be shocked. Chu Yang hadn't even broken through to the soul reincarnation realm, yet his aura was already comparable to the 5th level of the soul reincarnation realm. And in such a short period of time, his cultivation level rose by 5 levels. This was truly shocking. The 2 elders were even more in awe of Chu Yang. In front of him, they were even more cautious and cautious. Chu Yang was able to assassinate a soul amalgamation realm martial artist when he was at the peak of the ascending soul realm. What would happen if he was at the 5th level of the soul reincarnation realm? The 2 elders couldn't even begin to imagine. The sea breeze blew and the waves surged. The deep blue ocean was already under their feet. Their speed was so fast that they would soon reach their target island. Young lord, it might be a little inappropriate for you to enter the tiger's den alone. At this moment the 2 elders spoke. They were already a little worried. After all, this involved the people from the East Continent. It's fine. I won't clash head-on with them. Chu Yang frowned slightly and spoke again. Send the news back. What did the patriarch say? Young lord, we haven't received news of the patriarch's disappearance. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. While the 3 of them were flying, an island suddenly appeared in front of them. Wait here. Yes, young lord. Chapter 935. His speed was extremely fast as he flew on the surface of the sea. Soon, a dense fog appeared in front of him. It was a mirage. Those who fell into it would easily lose their way. This was not a problem for him. After another incense stick of time, an island suddenly appeared in front of Chu Yang. It could be said that it was a big ship. The island was very small and looked down from above. Chu Yang looked at it and saw that it was like a huge ship floating on the surface of the sea, drifting along with the waves. It was extremely quiet on the island. In the sky where the island met the atmosphere there was a layer of light shield. This was a protective shield formed by an array. Chu Yang was an array master, so this was nothing to him. This island was the place where the 4 emperors of the 4 countries, Jun Tianhen, and the others discussed with the people from the East continent. Other than the protective shield of the array, there was no other security on the island. Obviously, they were very confident. No one would have thought of it and no one would come to investigate. Chu Yang's gaze penetrated the island. He immediately saw that there was not only a huge array under the island, but also countless mechanisms. Once activated, the entire island could move quickly. It was really an unparalleled huge ship. That's? While Chu Yang was carefully observing the entire island, he immediately felt several incomparably vigorous auras. As soon as he perceived them, he immediately saw the 4 sovereigns of the 4 countries. These 4 people were all wearing dragon robes. Their facial features were full of majesty. Aside from the 4 kings, there were 4 other people with monstrous auras. One of them had eyes like a golden vortex, one had hair like a lion's mane, one had a 3rd eye on his forehead, and the last one had a thick baleful aura around him. Gold Rock King, Lion King, 3-Eyed King, Tiger King, the kings of the demon clan in the eastern wilderness were all present. Then, Chu Yang saw 2 more people on the island. These 2 people's complexions were incomparably pale, sickly pale. Jun Tianhen. Jun Tianhen. Chu Yang couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Second brother, if we join Qianzi, I'm afraid the elders will not tolerate us. This is simply turning our backs on our ancestors, sigh. The sect master of the Thousand Devil sect, Jun Tiannu, let out a long sigh. We are the true masters of the eastern wilderness, but now we are reduced to slaves. As he spoke, he fiercely gritted his teeth. Damned lowlife, I will definitely cut this Chu Yang into 1,000 pieces and tear his corpse into 1,000 pieces. Third brother, be careful with your words, the clan leader of the Soul Devourer clan said. If they hear you, I'm afraid it won't be good. Jun Tiannu nodded. Behind him, Jun Tianhen frowned and said, We are just pretending to be obedient. Later, they will ask for an exorbitant price. So what if we offend them? Big Brother is already at the 3rd level of the Soul Amalgamation Realm. If he obtains the source of the small dimensional world in the East Continent, he will definitely break through. At that time, he will sweep through the Eastern Wilderness. Who can stop him? As for Qianzi, Jun Tianhen sneered. Does he think we don't know what he's planning? Chu Yang was originally listening to the conversation between the 2, but suddenly, several incomparably vigorous auras broke through the air and directly entered the island. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes. He could feel that these people's auras were completely different from those in the eastern wilderness. They are from the East Continent. Senior Brother Haomiao, this time we are here to negotiate with the local tyrants of the eastern wilderness. Are we really going to compromise and give the extremely precious source of the dimensional worlds to these bumpkins? You must know that it was extremely difficult for Qianzi to obtain the source of these dimensional worlds. He risked his life, and even we didn't have the chance to obtain a trace of it. How can we give it to these bumpkins for free? Chapter 936. Chu Yang carefully sensed that this young man should be at the 7th level of the spirit realm. However, he felt that this young man was even stronger than Jun Tiancho. Senior Brother Haomiao made Chu Yang even more shocked. His soul fusion realm was far superior to Jun Tiancho's soul fusion realm. When this person appeared in the eastern wilderness, his entire body emitted an aura that could dominate the world. His cultivation was unfathomable. Chu Yang could even feel the sharp aura coming from his body. He also sensed a powerful mental power that completely surpassed Jun Tianqiu's. It was very likely that he was at the peak of the 9th level of the soul fusion realm. However, his strength was greatly suppressed. The surrounding void was clearly rejecting and suppressing him. Although the same situation happened to the scarred young man, it wasn't as obvious and intense as this person. The Eastern Wilderness is the most important part of Qian Zi's plan. If you occupy the Eastern Wilderness, Qian Zi will be able to advance or retreat. Even if you offend an old antique or enrage a major force, you won't have to be afraid. You can do whatever you want. Senior brother Haomiao continued, as for these bumpkins in the Eastern Wilderness, we can only let them off easy for now. Once Qian Zi refines the multidimensional world's origin and injects it into the Eastern Wilderness's origin, he will leave his mark. At that time, the entire Eastern Wilderness will belong to Qian Zi. It will also be the time when these bumpkins die. As he spoke, senior brother Haomiao gritted his teeth. It seemed that he didn't even have the chance to experience the softness of peerless beauties. Instead, he gave them to a group of beggars. Then we can only endure for now. As long as we can endure for a period of time, these bumpkins will all die. The scarred young man said fiercely. It won't be long. Junior brother Chongkong and the others should be on their way with the multidimensional world's origin. When we deal with these bumpkins, junior brother Chongkong and the others will inject the multidimensional world's origin into the Eastern Wilderness's origin. The group from the East Continent continued their conversation as they flew deeper into the island. Soon they stopped talking. On the other side, the 4 emperors of the 4 nations had gathered again and were flying toward the group from the East Continent. The 4 emperors of the 4 countries, the kings of the monster race, Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu, must have communicated with each other. However, they must have had their own plans. Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu were the first to reveal their powerful qi. Poisonous qi rolled around their bodies, showing their noble qi. At first glance, they seemed to be the masters of this island. Everyone has arrived. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. It's fine. Senior brother Haomiao immediately smiled and said, I think the 2 of you should be the descendants of the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness. Indeed, the difference in strength is different. Qian Zi asked me to send his regards to the 2 of you. Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu had shown their strength in order to increase their right to speak, so that they could ask for an exorbitant price. As for senior brother Haomiao, he wanted to destroy the relationship between Jun Tianhen and the 4 emperors of the 4 kingdoms, so he deliberately treated him differently. This immediately worked. The 4 emperors of the 4 kingdoms and the kings of the monster race's eyes lit up. They also went up to greet them and said with great enthusiasm, Honored guests, please forgive us for not welcoming you from afar. These 4 must be the 4 emperors of the Eastern Wilderness, Emperor Wei, Emperor Qi, Emperor Wu, and Emperor Han. Senior brother Haomiao smiled and said to the kings of the monster race, This must be the Gold Rock King. He pointed out each of them to show that he valued them. Then, he cupped his fists and said, Junior Si Haomiao greets the seniors. After some small talk, Jun Tianhen and the others said, Young Master Haomiao, this way please. This way please. The group of dozens of people left in a grandiose manner. They entered the most exquisite palace on the island and disappeared. Chu Yang saw everything clearly, but he did not continue to follow them. It was too dangerous. Chu Yang felt that Si Haomiao of the East Continent was not simple. He was afraid that Si Haomiao would discover him. As for the news he had heard, it was extremely important. The people of the East Continent were making a move on the other side. If they succeeded, the consequences would be unimaginable. Stop them. I must stop them. I must not let them succeed. Chu Yang was very decisive, and he was also very clear about the consequences. His priority now wasn't to assassinate Jun Tianhen, the 4 countries' 4 emperors, or Miao. Instead, it was to stop the other group of people from the East Continent, that so-called junior martial brother Chongkong. If I rob the passerby of the East Continent and obtain the origin of those dimensional worlds, my divine demon martial soul will be greatly improved. At that time, it will be much easier for me to kill this group of people. Chapter 937. Having made up his mind, Chu Yang immediately took action. His body moved silently, leaving the island in an instant. Then, he found the 2 elders and asked them to look for the other group of people from the East Continent, while he himself flew in the direction of the East Continent. At the end of the distant ocean was the East Continent, a place Chu Yang had never been to before. Although the Eastern Wilderness seemed to be connected to the East Continent by a sea, the 2 were in different space-time dimensions, and that sea was not an ordinary sea, but the space-time turbulence. The space-time turbulence was extremely chaotic, and space-time storms raged everywhere. Ordinary creatures could not pass through at all, but because the Eastern Wilderness was connected to the East Continent by a link, there was a space passage on this link to enter and exit the Eastern Wilderness. If Chu Yang's guess was correct, the other group from the Eastern Wilderness should have entered the Eastern Wilderness later than Miao's group, so they should be on their way here at this moment. He followed a route, flying in a straight line. As he flew, he fully released his powerful divine instinct, sensing the fluctuations in all directions. Along the way, he saw sporadic ships heading towards the East Continent. Those were the people from the Eastern Wilderness who were going to the East Continent. Because of the space-time storms, although there were space passages connecting to the East Continent from the Eastern Wilderness, these spaces were extremely unstable and had a high probability of shattering, so it was extremely dangerous. Chu Yang flew further and further, and soon the sporadic ships on the sea were gone. The waves in the ocean were getting more and more dangerous, and the climate was changing constantly, and there were almost no creatures in the sea. His divine sense swept across the ocean, but he could not see any sea beasts or living creatures, let alone fish. In such a dangerous environment, it was difficult for creatures to survive. Gradually, he suddenly realized that the ocean in front of him seemed to be divided, and a huge barrier appeared in front of him. The Eastern Wilderness Barrier? This was the end of the Eastern Wilderness, and beyond it was the space-time turbulence. After passing through the space-time turbulence, he would immediately reach the East Continent, and there would be a completely different world there. Could it be that the other group from the East Continent has already reached the Eastern Wilderness? Rumble. Just as Chu Yang was feeling bewildered, a strong wave of spiritual energy suddenly came from the space barrier of the Eastern Wilderness. Behind it, a passage slowly opened, and a large golden ship appeared on the sea. This large ship was a noble golden color, as if it was the dragon ship of an emperor. It was huge and oppressive, releasing extremely powerful fluctuations, as if an emperor was patrolling his own sea region. As soon as it appeared, the raging waves on the surface of the sea, which could easily overturn a hill-sized ship, immediately disappeared. Everything seemed to be suppressed by a large hand. The giant ship was enveloped by a light shield, and at the edge of the light shield, there were streaks of pitch-black color that appeared and disappeared immediately. It was a spatial tear. The giant ship was too powerful, and the space-time on this side of the Eastern Wilderness was unable to withstand it. Space was torn apart. Chu Yang easily perceived that there was a suffocating and extremely vigorous aura in the giant ship. This aura seemed to be even more vigorous than the ocean. There was no doubt that this was another group of people from the East Continent. Chapter 938. This is troublesome. Chu Yang frowned as he looked at the giant golden ship. He felt like he was facing a steel hedgehog. He didn't know where to start. Moreover, the giant ship could even tear the void apart. He definitely wouldn't be able to break through its defenses. Know yourself, know your enemy, and you'll win every battle. Chu Yang carefully sensed the powerful aura and found that there were 6 or 7 other powerful auras beside it. He could sense the aura even more clearly. He found that this aura was like the giant ship in front of him. The void around it was constantly tearing apart and mending. Those above the 5th level of the Soul Fusion realm have surpassed the Eastern Wilderness's realm limit. The Eastern Wilderness's origin. Because Qianzi had injected the origin of the dimensional world, the Eastern Wilderness's realm limit had been raised to the Soul Fusion realm. However, it was only at the 5th level of the Soul Fusion realm at most. In other words, the aura Chu Yang sensed could tear apart the Eastern Wilderness's void. This meant that even if he suppressed his realm, his cultivation was still at the edge of the Eastern Wilderness's permissible limit. This person should be the junior brother Changkong that Si Haomiao had mentioned. Chu Yang shouldn't be a match for him at all. Although his divine demon martial soul had begun to create worlds and his strength had increased greatly, it still wasn't enough. This person was much stronger than Jun Tianqiu. Is this the difference between the Eastern Wilderness and the East Continent? Chu Yang narrowed his eyes and said fiercely, I have to do it even if I can't. He definitely wouldn't allow that so-called Qianzi to occupy the entire Eastern Wilderness. The Eastern Wilderness was where his friends and family lived. How could he give it to someone else? Beat the grass and startle the snake. Chu Yang's eyes flashed. He quickly came up with a plan. I'll startle them and lure them out to assassinate them. Chu Yang was only one person. The people of the East Continent had their eyes on the top of their heads. They would definitely not put him in their eyes. Moreover, their trip was top secret. If they were discovered, they would definitely kill him. They would never let him go. With his decision made, Chu Yang looked at the golden ship below. While suppressing the wind and waves, because he feared tearing through space would be too intense, he could only slowly move forward. However, none of this could shake his mind. He displayed the 5 elements' thunderous hand. Rumble! With a loud bang, Chu Yang made his move. A thick bolt of lightning struck the giant warship. However, the giant warship's protective shield only emitted a dazzling light, but it did not budge at all. Hiss! Chu Yang couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Where did this madman come from? He actually dares to be so impudent towards us. You don't know the difference between life and death. An ant dares to offend us? Kill without mercy. We can't spare them. At first, the people on the giant ship were slightly shocked, but then they couldn't help but become enraged, roaring angrily. Soon, 7 or 8 people appeared. The one in the lead was a one-eyed youth. At this moment, a cold light flashed in his single eye. He stared at Chu Yang like a ferocious beast. It's him. Chu Yang immediately confirmed his assassination target. Then, he smiled at the 7 or 8 people on the giant warship and said, It's a misunderstanding. I misjudged you. Please forgive me. Chu Yang immediately left. A native of the Eastern Wilderness. He's just an ant. He shouldn't have been discovered by one of the local tyrants. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made a move. Regardless of whether he is or not, we can't let him escape. Chapter 939. Whoosh. The one-eyed youth was extremely fast. Sonic booms, sharp whistles, and the sound of the wind could be heard as he flew. With just a single movement, the space around him was shattered. At the same time, the restriction of the laws of the world on him became even stronger. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on him, causing his body to sway and his cultivation to fall to the spirit stage. Now's the time. Chu Yang made his move. Boom! The light and dark wings appeared behind him. One was the angel's wing, while the other was the demon's wing. In an instant, it was as if hell and heaven had appeared behind him at the same time, pushing him to fly at an extremely fast speed. Then, his body suddenly disappeared and completely disappeared into the void. Humph, petty tricks! The one-eyed youth sneered in disdain. But just as he finished speaking, Chu Yang suddenly appeared behind him. He condensed the demon's sword and stabbed forward. As the sword appeared, the world turned dark. The sun and moon lost their light. Ghosts wailed and demons howled. Demonic aura surged, and the massacre march resounded. The aura of death surged out as if a demon had descended. The Grim Reaper was holding the Grim Reaper's scythe, and was about to reap the lives of living beings. "Native, how dare you!" The one-eyed youth was furious and grinned. With a rumble, a massive aura burst out. He grabbed out with his hand, causing the space to change and explode. A spatial storm was formed to kill Chu Yang. Die! At this moment, the one-eyed youth was the most powerful existence in the eastern wilderness. His white hand seemed to contain the most terrifying power in the world. With a single grab, the space shattered. No one in the eastern wilderness could withstand it. He was indeed powerful, but this world was too weak. Even the void couldn't withstand his grab. Whoosh! At this critical moment, Chu Yang didn't want to be involved in the spatial storm. Therefore, he could only give up on the assassination attempt. He flapped his angel's wing and demon's wing and escaped. He immediately disappeared into the void. "Native, you're truly daring. You actually dared to assassinate me." With a furious voice, the one-eyed youth grabbed the void and exploded it. A spatial storm swept out. At the same time, he wantonly destroyed the eastern wilderness. The laws of heaven and earth once again acted on him, fiercely suppressing his cultivation. His cultivation was once again suppressed back to the peak of the spirit stage. Hee. Chu Yang's voice rang out from the void. It was extremely sarcastic. "Do you think I won't be able to find you if you hide in the void? The eastern wilderness restricts me greatly, but do you think I can't touch you? Do you think I need to use my full strength to kill a mere native like you?" Whoosh! The one-eyed young man sneered. Then, he lunged in Chu Yang's direction. He had indeed clearly captured Chu Yang's location. After all, in this world, he could even easily tear apart the void. It was far too easy for him to capture Chu Yang's track. However, this time, he suppressed his cultivation to the peak of spirit stage 9th level. Just as he said, he didn't put Chu Yang in his eyes. At this critical moment, Chu Yang did not escape. After all, he couldn't escape. At this moment, he used both his divine and demonic martial souls. Rumble! Suddenly, a gigantic phantom appeared behind him. It looked like a god and a demon. It looked like a god that created the world. It also looked like a demon king. It looked like the incarnation of the heavens and earth that looked down on the world. What is that? That native actually turned into a god. Is he the ruler of the heavens and earth? That's too terrifying. Of the 6 or 7 people on the giant ship, those with weaker cultivation couldn't even look at the phantom. None of them were able to remain calm. They were all stunned. Being looked down at by the gigantic phantom, they felt an indescribably terrifying pressure. It was as if they were ants facing the heavens. Every single one of them had a pale complexion. They couldn't help but tremble. This was a natural suppression. It was an instinctive fear that originated from the soul. Even Chu Yang was shocked by such power. However, he immediately understood after making a deduction. This was the power of the eastern wilderness. It was the power of the eastern wilderness. It wasn't Chu Yang's own power. It was attracted by his divine and demonic martial soul, causing the laws of the heavens and earth to act on him. With his help, he was able to eliminate the one-eyed young man. Chapter 940. After Chu Yang borrowed the power of the eastern wilderness, he suddenly reached out with his hand. The projection behind him moved at the same time. The projection was so huge that its head touched the sky and its feet stepped on the ground. It was boundless. When it reached out with its hand, the entire sea was covered, and the sky was no longer visible. The sky trembled as if it was about to collapse, and the giant warship was as small as a fish in front of the hand. How is this possible? How can the natives of the eastern wilderness possess such power? The one-eyed youth was scared out of his wits. Chu Yang responded. He said playfully, I said there's light, so there's light. I said there was darkness, so there was darkness. I said you're guilty, so you're guilty. Under the support of the laws of heaven and earth, it was as if the heavens were speaking. His voice was not loud, but it was like thunder had descended. The giant warship trembled violently, and everyone on it felt like their ears were ringing. They were about to fall, and they all spat out mouthfuls of blood. This was too terrifying. Were the natives of the eastern wilderness all so powerful? The giant hand reached down, and it could be said that it covered the sky. An extremely oppressive aura filled every corner of the void. The one-eyed youth and the others trembled in fear. There was actually such a powerful being in the eastern wilderness. Ah! The one-eyed youth was still in a daze, but he was already caught in the giant hand. Senior brother Changkong! Hurry up and run! They were unable to resist such an astonishing power, and it made them feel despair. The remaining people had no intention of resisting at all. They flew out of the giant warship and fled for their lives. Do you think you can escape? The voice was like a tsunami that connected heaven and earth. It also seemed to come from the 9 heavens, as if it had pierced through time and space. A giant hand reached out toward these fleeing people. The giant hand of the heavens was extremely dazzling, and each finger was a giant sun. There seemed to be all kinds of laws of the great Tao intersecting on them. Chu Yang seemed to be the ruler of heaven and earth. He had descended to the mortal realm to clean up the world. This group of people was all trash, and not a single piece of trash could escape. However, no one died. Even the one-eyed young man was no exception. Chu Yang had originally wanted to crush the one-eyed youth, but in the end, he discovered that he was stopped by an indescribable power. The one-eyed youth's cultivation had only been plundered by the laws of heaven and earth in the eastern wilderness, and had fallen to the ascending soul tier. The same was true for the other 6 or 7 people. It was as if the people from the East continent were just a few puppies, and he was only cleaning off the dirt on them. Their excessively high cultivation bases were the greatest stain in this world. Still not clean enough? Chu Yang used his godly devil martial spirit and plundered their cultivation once again. He plundered their cultivation completely, causing them to fall to the origin martial realm. After that, the power of the eastern wilderness completely disappeared from his body. In the end, it's not my own strength that's unreliable. Whoosh! Chu Yang entered the giant ship and began to take control of it. Naturally, he couldn't let go of this giant ship. If he wanted to go to the East continent in the future, he would have to rely on this giant ship. Who exactly are you? Do you know what the consequences of attacking us are? The one-eyed youth was shocked and fearful, but his words were still extremely arrogant. He was just relying on his identity from the East continent and the so-called lackey of Qianzi. Chu Yang ignored them. Their cultivation bases had all been plundered, and they were no longer a threat. Chapter 941. The jade bottle wasn't big, but Chu Yang's hand suddenly grabbed it. Suddenly, a powerful force burst out, bouncing off his 5 fingers. The web between his thumb and forefinger was cracked, and the bones in his entire arm were almost all broken. In addition, just by grabbing it, he felt that the jade bottle was extremely heavy. It was heavier than a mountain, heavier than an ocean. At that moment, Chu Yang felt as if he was trying to grab a world. The jade bottle also contained an extremely powerful restriction. Chu Yang tried to open it, but to no avail. It's really amazing. Chu Yang was shocked. He had obtained the eastern wilderness's source before, but he had never felt this way. He directly used his divine demon martial spirit, and the many restrictions on the jade bottle were immediately broken. Many talisman seals were broken and disappeared. With a bang, the moment he pulled out the cork, a huge amount of spirit chi went berserk. It rumbled like a raging wave, rushing out of the jade bottle and sending him flying. However, he didn't feel any discomfort. When the spirit chi hit him, it was also absorbed by him. At that moment, he only felt that his entire body was comfortable. It was as if his entire body had opened up, and he vaguely felt like he was floating in the air. He once again sensed the inside of the jade bottle, and he was shocked to see a hazy, chaotic lake. The source of the dimensional world? So many dimensional world sources? No wonder the jade bottle was so heavy. Chu Yang also felt that the source of this dimensional world seemed to be much stronger than the source of the eastern wilderness. Haha! Chu Yang laughed heartily. With so many dimensional world sources, it was enough for his divine demon martial spirit to condense the world in his palm. Suddenly rich, overnight rich. Only these two words could describe Chu Yang's current mood. He was like a rich man who had completed the most primitive evil accumulation of wealth in an instant. Aboriginal, who are you? The one-eyed youth was terrified. If the source of these dimensional worlds was taken away, even if he didn't die, he didn't know what kind of consequences he would face. He knew all too well just how much Qian Zi had paid in order to obtain the source energies of these dimensional worlds. He had crazily destroyed over a dozen dimensional worlds and plundered their source energies. There were several times when Qian Zi had nearly lost his life, and because of this, he had offended countless people. I am the Lord, the omnipotent Lord. If there is light, there will be light. If there is darkness, there will be darkness. You have offended the Lord just now. The Lord of penitence will grant you mercy and forgiveness. Amen. Chu Yang was in an extremely good mood and responded in this way. After that, he sighed to himself. It's a pity that the laws of the eastern wilderness are incomplete. I can't break through to the soul reincarnation realm in the eastern wilderness. The soul wheel realm was a realm where one's martial soul was upgraded and one could use the martial soul to condense a soul wheel before forming a spirit. The strength of Chu Yang's divine demon martial spirit had long surpassed the strength of condensing the soul reincarnation realm. However, because of his martial spirit, he had already jumped out of the cultivation system of ordinary martial artists. He needed to upgrade his martial spirit again in order to advance. Moreover, he didn't even need to condense the soul reincarnation realm. At this moment, Chu Yang really wanted to immediately head to the eastern continent. However, now wasn't the time. He had to clean up all the hidden dangers in the eastern wilderness before he could leave with a peace of mind. What? You are actually still in the ascending soul realm? This is impossible, this is definitely impossible. How can a mere ascending soul realm have such terrifying strength? After hearing Chu Yang's words, the one-eyed youth was stunned for a moment before he screamed crazily. Heavens, is he still human? The eastern wilderness actually has such a heaven-defying character. The eastern wilderness is just a corner that is incomparably barren. It can't even compare to the many small dimensional worlds in our eastern continent. How could it possibly give birth to such a character? Chapter 942. Aboriginal. Chu Yang raised his hand and sent them flying with a slap. He smiled and said, Am I still an aboriginal now? The one-eyed youth and the others didn't dare to make a sound, but they didn't beg for mercy either. Chu Yang didn't have time to deal with them. He started to absorb the origin of the dimensional world in the jade bottle to improve his martial soul. However, just as he touched the origin of the dimensional world in the jade bottle, a change occurred. Rumble! Thunder rumbled. Above the azure blue sky, thunder and lightning tore through the void. Lightning flashed, and the world suddenly lit up and shook violently. Then, the color of the sky changed. A thunder cloud covered the entire sky of the eastern wilderness. The light immediately dimmed, and the rumbling of thunder became even more intense. It seemed like it would fall at any time. What's going on? Is the heavenly Duke angry? Chu Yang was shocked. He felt an extremely strong sense of danger. The heavenly might of the eastern wilderness had completely enveloped him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the jade bottle started to tremble violently. The void it was in shattered like a mirror, but it was safe and sound in the spacetime storm. Qian Zi of the East Continent? Chu Yang suddenly felt as if he was a rabbit being stared at by a python. He knew that some terrifying existence had locked onto him, and the source of the danger came from that jade bottle. Qianzi, it's Qianzi. This aboriginal is dead. He's dead. Qianzi is angry. The eastern wilderness is going to be turned upside down. Doomsday is coming. The one-eyed youth and the others were overjoyed. It was as if they had been saved from death. They all screamed at the top of their lungs and knelt down in front of the jade bottle. At this moment, endless rays of light burst out from the jade bottle. The entire bottle became bright and translucent. The endless rays of light converged and formed a human figure. His entire body was burning with white gold flames. Although his figure was vague, his eyes were very clear. When this human figure looked at Chu Yang, his eyes were surprisingly a sun and a moon. Is this Qianzi really that terrifying? Just by getting angry, he caused the wrath of heaven to appear? Chu Yang was shocked, but he immediately denied it. No, it should be that this so-called Son of Heaven is about to descend. His strength has exceeded the upper limit, and the eastern wilderness does not allow his existence. It has issued a warning and a threat. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Immediately after, the air around him fluctuated violently, and the void suddenly trembled. The power of heaven and earth appeared around him, causing the space he was in to shift. Power of the eastern wilderness. The power of the eastern wilderness obeys Qian Zi's will. Chu Yang's mind trembled violently. He once again sensed the origin power of the eastern wilderness descending. However, this time, it didn't descend upon him, but the light and shadow in the jade bottle. The will of the eastern wilderness seemed to have submitted to Qian Zi and was acting according to Qian Zi's wishes. Whoosh! Chu Yang instantly disappeared. When he sensed again, he found himself inside the jade bottle. The space inside the jade bottle was even more stable and sturdy than the void of the eastern wilderness. One could imagine how fragile the eastern wilderness was. The reason why Qian Zi wanted the eastern wilderness was probably because the eastern wilderness was under the protection of the main world. In the center of the jade bottle was the human figure. Its face was blurry, and the light formed 9 huge dragons that landed behind it. The 9 dragons glared at Chu Yang angrily, as if they were going to pounce on Chu Yang at any moment. These dragons seemed to be very different from the dragons in the eastern wilderness. This caused Chu Yang's mind to tremble again. The dragons in the eastern wilderness aren't dragons in the eastern continent, but insects? At the same time, Chu Yang was inside the jade bottle. The chaotic and hazy fog formed by the origin power of the dimensional world entered his body, causing the spirit qi in his body to boil. The acupoints in his body were like thousands of volcanoes erupting together, shaking the heavens and earth. However, the scenes were all different. Some spewed out flames, some grew into a huge plant, some grew into a mountain, and some were like a flood. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were the first to erupt. The momentum was ferocious to the extreme. After that, dragons, tigers, clouds, and lightning also erupted. Chu Yang's aura rose again, and then light and darkness appeared. He instantly felt that he didn't need to use the god-devil martial spirit. Just by relying on the origin power of the dimensional world, he immediately cultivated 8 types of divine and 8 types of demonic physiques, breaking into the soul reincarnation realm. Not good. Chu Yang was shocked once again. He immediately restrained himself. The light became even brighter, and the origin power of the dimensional world surged into the light figure, causing the light figure to condense into a young man. His face was completely clear, and his eyes were strange. One was like the sun, and the other was like the moon. The aura on his body was overwhelming, and it seemed like he could blow Chu Yang away with just a breath. Chu Yang was unrestrained in the eastern wilderness, but at this moment, in front of this young man, he didn't even have the slightest strength to resist. Without a doubt, this young man in front of him was the so-called East Continent's Qianzi. He was incomparably powerful and shocking. Naturally, this wasn't his true body. Chu Yang could see that this was just a spiritual imprint of the Qianzi that was condensed from the origin power of the dimensional world. Just a spiritual imprint was so terrifying. Chapter 943. Within the jade bottle, Qianzi was sitting on a throne high in the air. It was as if he was in the heavens. He was the supreme god that controlled the heavens. Holy light shone around him, making him look like a real god. In his eyes, his pupils were like the sun and moon rising and falling. The sun and moon seemed to be moving within his body. This pair of eyes was like the heavens looking down on all living things. They coldly looked at Chu Yang. Under this pair of eyes, Chu Yang felt as if his greatest secret had been completely seen through. "Ant, how dare you touch what belongs to me?" The sound seemed to be the sound of heaven and earth from the 9 heavens. It was the sound of the great Tao, the sound of gods and demons. It transformed into a huge dragon, and then transformed again into a magnificent army. It rushed into Chu Yang's ears and wanted to penetrate his brain. Although there was no wind, Chu Yang's long hair and sleeves fluttered in the wind. However, with just a thought, that grave and stern voice that carried endless pressure instantly shattered and disappeared into nothingness. "You are indeed not bad." Qianzi, who was high in the air, was not surprised. Although there is the restriction of the eastern wilderness, that trash Lu Chongkong is at least at the 5th level of the soul amalgamation realm. You are only at the peak of the ascending soul realm. To be able to defeat him, you are indeed amazing. Especially since you are in the eastern wilderness, this well is even more shocking. The eastern wilderness was a well to the people of the East Continent. The people of the eastern wilderness were all frogs at the bottom of the well. "Are you done with your evaluation?" Chu Yang smiled. It was just a spiritual imprint. How could he not have a way to deal with it? "You are very disrespectful, but you do have the right to be arrogant." Qianzi was not angry. "In the eastern wilderness, no one can compare to you. It can be said that you are the ruler of this world. Even the average person of the East Continent is definitely not your opponent. Therefore, I will allow you to be so arrogant. However, this will only be the first time." "Hey!" Chu Yang was very unhappy. This was his style. He would evaluate his opponent from high above. "I say, did you make a mistake? It is just a spiritual imprint. You dare to be so arrogant in front of me?" "Ha ha!" Qianzi laughed out loud. That's right. My subordinates have to be high and mighty and look down on everyone else. If anyone refuses to submit, then they will submit and die." After a pause, Qianzi's eyes once again looked down from the sky. The sun and moon appeared at the same time, and the light was endless. "Your crimes are unforgivable, but I'll give you a chance. Submit to me, and I'll make you second only to one person and above millions." He. Chu Yang laughed mockingly. He actually wanted to subdue him and make him a slave? If they were in the East Continent right now, Chu Yang might still be able to feign civility if Qianzi had come in person. However, in the eastern wilderness, he could only chuckle. "I am the Lord of all life, the Lord of the sun and moon, the Lord of all things, the Lord of gods and devils, the Lord of heaven and earth, the Lord of the great Tao, omnipotent. If I say there is a sky, then there is a sky. If I say there is a land, then there is a land." Chu Yang said, "Foolish people who offend the Lord will fall into hell and suffer endless pain and eternal wailing. Listen to the Lord's teachings, repent to the Lord, and be loyal to the Lord. The Lord will bless you and give you eternal life." Ba, not amen. Chu Yang was giving Qianzi a taste of his own medicine. he was returning all of Qianzi's actions. However, he felt that he was being more tactful and that his words were more artistic. "How dare you?" Qianzi was furious. It was as if the heavens were angry. His voice was like angry thunder, rumbling. "Foolish person, you are going further and further on the path of a fraud. I am very pleased to see that. Repent to the Lord. I will bestow upon you a divine position. From now on, you are no longer a fraud, but a real miracle. You don't have to fake anymore." Chapter 944. Humph! Qianzi snorted and said coldly, "Native of the eastern wilderness, I've been nice to you, but you don't know what's good for you. It seems that if I don't teach you the difference between a dragon and a worm, you won't be respectful." Chu Yang said, "Amitabha, the Lord is merciful and tolerant. Fallen man, the Lord will guide you to find the light in the darkness. Remember the Lord's hint. The night gave you a pair of black eyes. Please use them to find the light." It was very mocking. "Ha ha ha ha!" Qianzi laughed out of anger. Who was he? Even the supreme geniuses of the East Continent would tremble in front of him and be as obedient as a puppy. Today, he was looked down upon by a mere native of the eastern wilderness, acting so recklessly in front of him and even mocking him. "Native, you're just an ant," Qianzi said coldly. "Do you think I can't do anything to you just because I'm just a spiritual imprint? In my eyes, you're less than an ant. I can crush you to death with a raise of my hand." As soon as he finished speaking, Qianzi waved his hand from the throne. The 9 dragons behind him let out dragon roars and descended. Their aura filled the entire jade bottle as dragon roars echoed. Buzz! The 9 dragons came down majestically. It seemed as if the sky was collapsing. The entire firmament was pressing down on Chu Yang. "Kneel down." Qianzi's move seemed to have frozen the time and space within the jade bottle. At this moment, it was as if time had stopped. If Qianzi's real body had descended, Chu Yang wouldn't be a match for him. They weren't on the same level, and he didn't have the qualifications to fight against an expert like Qianzi. However, it was just a spiritual imprint. Moreover, this was the eastern wilderness. Why do demons exist? Why do they exist? The Lord said to teach people to be respectful. The demon of slaughter will make you revere the Lord. Chu Yang continued to talk nonsense. Then, waves of demonic aura surged out from his body. The demon created by the demonic martial soul hand spread its wings and flew out. Among the demons, only a pair of demon wings was clear and real. They were like bat wings, wrapped in rolling black demonic flames. The rest were all illusions. There wasn't enough energy to create a real devil with the devil martial spirit. Suddenly, a wave of evil, dark, and incomparably powerful, irresistible energy filled the entire jade bottle. The 9 dragons descended, and the evil demon let out a strange cry. It opened its mouth and devoured them as if it was eating 9 insects. It completely devoured the 9 dragons to replenish itself, causing its body to become more solid. "What is your martial spirit?" In midair, Qianzi was shocked and said, "I can feel that your martial soul is extraordinary. I even feel that if I get it, there will be no one in this world that I can fear. Give it to me." 1. Qianzi stretched out his hand and grabbed at Chu Yang. It was even more terrifying than the 9 dragons earlier. It was as if a giant hand from the heavens was descending. There were incomparably sacred runes on it, and it emitted a sacred light. It was sparkling and translucent. The Lord says, greed is the original sin. The Lord also says, the sea of bitterness is boundless, and there is no shore to turn back. Sink. Chu Yang only sneered when the giant hand reached out. He wouldn't die if he didn't seek death. Originally, he didn't want to use the divine demon martial soul. However, since Qianzi had discovered it, it didn't matter. He just had to erase Qianzi's imprint. Chu Yang felt that Qianzi could detect it because of the pair of strange eyes. It should be some kind of divine eyes. Chapter 945. What kind of martial spirit is this? Why is it so terrifying that I instinctively feel fear? Come out. The giant hand suddenly shrunk to the size of a human hand and suddenly became extremely solid and powerful. It was about to pierce through Chu Yang's head and take the divine demon out of his consciousness. However, the moment the giant hand touched Chu Yang's forehead, the sky changed color and the inside of the jade bottle changed. In the depths of countless spaces, rays of sacred light and the darkness of the universe appeared. All the spaces were broken. Qian Zi was like an ant that had broken into the intersection of heaven and hell. Buzz. The divine demon martial spirit and the divine demon martial spirit opened their eyes and looked at Qian Zi, who was in the air. Immediately, the space reversed. Chu Yang was in the air and Qian Zi was below him. Boundless divine might immediately burst out from his body. The divine aura was as vast as the sea. The divine demon martial spirit suddenly burst out with a peerless majesty. The jade bottle was trembling, but it could not hide the aura of the divine demon martial spirit. The one-eyed young man, Lu Chongkong, and the others outside did not know what was going on, but at this moment, they were all kneeling down and shouting Qian Zi's name. What kind of martial spirit is this? What kind of martial spirit is this? Qian Zi was incomparably terrified. He felt that Chu Yang's martial spirits were two extremely terrifying existences. Such existences shouldn't have appeared in this world, and they shouldn't have been possessed by any living creature. Guess. Is it the divine demon martial spirit? This divine demon martial spirit can't do anything to me? Qian Zi felt extreme danger and roared in anger. His hands quickly formed a seal. Immediately, a holy spirit flew out from his forehead and blocked the divine demon martial spirit's light and the divine demon martial spirit's dark corrosion temporarily. Then, the holy spirit opened its mouth. It was not a human language. Every syllable was very ancient, noble, holy, and great. It seemed like the language of the great Tao and also the language of a great civilization. Along with this kind of noble and ancient language, there was an indescribable qi flowing in the space of the jade bottle. An invisible force filled the air. However, when this formless power came into contact with Chu Yang, the Holy Spirit screamed in alarm. It was like a fox that had plucked out a strand of fur, only to discover that it was actually a tiger's fur. Impossible, this is impossible. Qian Zi was dumbfounded. Then, he felt an inexplicable force land on his body. Instantly, he was horrified to discover that he had been split into two by a dragon-shaped curve. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible, he roared. I was born from the heavens and earth. The heavens are my father, the earth is my mother, and the sun and moon are my siblings. How can there be someone more noble than me in this world? That's impossible. Heaven is the father, the earth is the mother, the sun and the moon are the brother and sister. What a big tone. To be honest, Chu Yang was shocked after hearing this. However, no matter how much the East Continent's Qian Zi was in disbelief, unwillingness, and struggle, it was all useless. He had been split into two equal parts and fell into the hands of the celestial demon martial soul to be used as materials to create angels and demons. The angel and fiend were condensed in an instant. What shocked Chu Yang was that it was only a spiritual imprint. The god and devil martial spirit used it as a material to create the angel and fiend. It was much clearer than before. This was too shocking. Roar. Although Qian Zi was in the East Continent, he immediately felt the erasure of his spiritual imprint. Then, in a certain dimensional world in the East Continent, a deafening roar erupted, shaking the entire dimensional world to the point of shattering. Who is it? Who dares to stop me? Who dares to ruin my plans? The roar continued. No one knew why Qian Zi was so angry, but on this day the East Continent was shaken. Chapter 946. The jade bottle isolated all light and sound. The one-eyed youth, Lu Chongkong, and the others had no idea what was happening inside the jade bottle. They only saw the jade bottle tremble violently for a while before it calmed down completely. Is it over? Lu Chongkong's single eye shone with admiration. Qianzi must have killed that native. That's right. How can that native be Qianzi's match? So what if that native is amazing? He can't compare to Qianzi. He's dead for sure. That's right. Qianzi's aura almost scared me to death. Lu Chongkong revealed a ruthless expression. That damned native actually crippled our cultivation. Later, we'll hope that Qianzi will show mercy and help us recover. As he spoke, he took the lead and knelt before the jade bottle. Qianzi rumble. Even as the words left his mouth, thunder rumbled in the sky, and massive waves rose up in the ocean. It was as if an enormous mountain or a planet had crashed into the ocean. The enormous battleship that had been able to easily suppress the waves now seemed very weak, like a small boat that could capsize at any moment. Whoosh whoosh. Tornadoes formed on the ocean, sweeping and wreaking havoc. What's happening? What's happening? Could it be that Qianzi had a great enlightenment? But that's not right. That's just a spiritual imprint of Qianzi. It's probably because Qianzi and that native were fighting and the power they displayed was too great. The eastern wasteland is too weak and couldn't withstand it. That's why such a shocking scene appeared. It's definitely impossible in our eastern continent. Lu Chongkong and the others soon realized that the mouth of the jade bottle seemed to be a black hole that was crazily and endlessly absorbing the energy of heaven and earth. Rumble. The scene in the sky was even more shocking. Thunder was densely packed in the sky. It was extremely terrifying. Even though Lu Chongkong and the others were on the giant warship and didn't know how far away they were from the sky, they could still clearly feel how terrifying the lightning in the sky was. Strange phenomena appeared one after another as all kinds of tribulations appeared. Earth, water, fire, wind, and boundless evil aura. They could even see pieces of space shattering. It was to the extent where countless stars appeared in the sky at this moment. Starlight that was about to pierce through and destroy the world appeared. There were so many forms of thunder and lightning, heavenly wind and cloud thunder, dragon and tiger roar, and heavenly demons and earthly fiends. Lu Chongkong and the rest had never seen so much thunder and thunder before. After that, the thunder rumbled, and the vital energy of heaven and earth became even more violent. Countless devils appeared in the sky above, descending in a grandiose manner, sounding the knell of death. What is this? Is the heavens jealous? The eastern wilderness can't tolerate Qianzi, and they're jealous of Qianzi. Is that why they've triggered a calamity to kill Qianzi? Lu Chongkong and the others made such a guess. The monsters descending from the sky were of all shapes and sizes. There was no end to them. It was as if a dark river was pouring down. Then, like flowing water, they all entered the jade bottle. Thunder like flowing water, such things actually happen. Lu Chongkong and the rest were all dumbstruck. They were already beginning to doubt their lives. Rumble. Such a scene appeared again. After the countless monsters, the thunder transformed into countless divine beings. In the end, it also turned into a long river of light that completely entered the jade bottle. What exactly happened? They couldn't understand at all. Buzz. Chapter 947. At this moment, within the jade bottle, they could see countless cracks in the space around Chu Yang. There was a hole on each of his left and right hand. White hole and black hole, two opposing forces. The origin of the world within was crazily pouring into the white hole. Then, the white hole spewed out endless light while the black hole was devouring everything, including the origin of the world. They didn't care about this. Chu Yang actually didn't die. Chu Yang didn't die, which meant that Qianzi's spiritual imprint had been erased. All these shocking phenomena had nothing to do with Qianzi. What is that? Oh my God, are you for real? God, are you joking or am I dreaming? Rumble! Thunder rumbled in the sky, and lightning covered the sky densely. There were lightning anomalies everywhere. At this moment, the lightning that fell formed a phenomenon of stars falling like rain. Lu Chongkong and the others were almost crazy as they screamed in fear. However, what made them even crazier was that they thought they were going to die. In the end, they realized that these lightning tribulations weren't interested in them at all and were all blasted into the jade bottle. What was this? The lightning tribulations greeted them and then whizzed past without taking away a single cloud. This was something that had never happened before. It was a shocking phenomenon. However, this was just the beginning. Soon, they screamed again. Divine Void Lightning. Lightning Judgment Spear. Lightning Punishment Heavenly Palace. Every scene and phenomenon caused Lu Chongkong's heart to tremble violently. After telling them all the shocking lightning tribulations they knew, they were already scared out of their wit. Why? Why would there be such terrifying lightning tribulations and so many phenomena? Is he still human? Even if this native is advancing, how could he trigger so many great tribulations? I have only seen these tribulations in ancient records. Shocking, simply shocking. Moreover, he has only advanced to the soul wheel realm. How could there be lightning tribulations in the soul wheel realm? What kind of genius is this? There's definitely no such person in the East Continent. If he goes to the East Continent, it would be incredible. Perhaps the reason why such lightning tribulations can appear is because the Eastern wilderness is too weak. The restrictions of the laws aren't strong enough, which is why they appear. This made sense, and it was the truth. This was just like a kingdom. If the kingdom was weak, there would definitely be people who would be impudent and turn the world upside down. However, if the kingdom was strong, whoever dared to do so would immediately be destroyed. Who would dare to be impudent? Good, good, good. My martial spirit has advanced once again, breaking through the limits of the eastern wilderness and causing so many lightning tribulations to descend. I am indeed different from the rest of the world. Since ancient times, I am the most powerful person under the heavens. Ha ha. Hearing Chu Yang's loud laughter, Lu Chongkong and the others really wanted to kill someone. They really broke down. There was actually such a thing in this world, such a person. Come on, come on. Let the heavenly tribulation come even more fiercely. Let the laws of heaven and earth in the eastern wilderness become even more powerful. Chu Yang laughed heartily. The strength of the divine demon martial spirit was once again proven. The thunder was like a storm, but all the thunder was divided into two halves, turning into a long river of thunder and flowing into the white hole and the black hole respectively. Whether it was a white hole or a black hole, they were the embryonic form of a world. Rumble! The sparkling divine void lightning struck down and instantly exploded. Endless lightning wreaked havoc, but it was immediately devoured clean. Comfortable. Chu Yang felt the power of lightning attracted by the divine demon martial spirit tempering his body. Instantly, his entire body felt incomparably comfortable and extremely restrained. Chapter 948. Chu Yang didn't care about this at all. He just lazily lay in the jade bottle. As for the dimensional world's origin in the jade bottle, it had long been sucked clean. Otherwise, how could it form a white hole and a black hole? Whoosh! A thunder judgment spear pierced down, but it was instantly sliced in half by an invisible force. Following that, a series of lightning palaces came crashing down, and all of them were devoured. Soon, the white hole stopped spewing out light, and the black hole wasn't as dark as before. There was no more illusionary aura around the two, as they had completely turned from illusionary to real. Moreover, the world seemed to be opening up. The thunderbolts continued to fall. Suddenly, a thunderous axe appeared in the sky and appeared in the sky. This huge axe was hundreds of feet long and seemed to be able to kill everything. It exploded with endless sharpness as it brazenly slashed down. World Annihilation Axe. How is this possible? Lu Changkong and the others were originally dumbfounded, but at this moment, their pupils violently trembled. The Thunder Axe had actually formed. The World Annihilation Axe had actually appeared. It was rumored that the World Annihilation Axe would only appear when one ascended to the Sage Realm. And this World Annihilation Axe could destroy an entire world with a single slash. Lu Changkong and the others looked at the numerous shocking lightning tribulations. The rumbling of the lightning and the sound of the great bell caused Lu Changkong and the others' ears to buzz. It was as if they had been completely shaken into idiot. It wasn't strange for such a person to destroy Qian Zi's spiritual imprint. They felt that this native of the eastern wilderness could even easily kill Qian Zi. Just as they were in a daze, the sky suddenly trembled as a mountain of thunder tribulations appeared. This mountain was like an ancient divine mountain with 5 peaks. 5 Prison Thunder Mountain. Such a phenomenon has also appeared. The 5 Prison Thunder Mountain was said to represent the 5 extreme powers: destruction, chaos, blasphemy, and evil. However, what shocked them the most was that such a terrifying thunder tribulation had landed right beside them, but they were strangely unaffected. Logically speaking, they should have already been turned into ashes. However, that jade bottle had devoured all the lightning energy as though it was afraid that the lightning energy wasn't enough. It would feel heartache if some leaked out. Haha, so this is the nation of God, and this is the nation of devils? Chu Yang's laughter suddenly rang out from the jade bottle, attracting Lu Changkong and the others once again. They numbly turned their gazes, and immediately after, they fiercely stabbed. At this moment, Chu Yang was lying comfortably at the bottom of the jade bottle space with a leisurely and satisfied expression. This really was too shocking. Who could cross tribulation so easily? What a bastard! Following Chu Yang's gaze, they immediately saw the so-called kingdom of God and kingdom of devil. One was the most righteous, holy, and godly, with boundless light, while the other was the most evil and demonic, with billowing demonic energy and endless darkness. They felt that the so-called kingdom of God and kingdom of devils seemed to be more stable than the eastern wilderness they were currently in. That's not impossible. After all, there are so many dimensional world origins. Furthermore, the dimensional worlds that Qian Zi has plundered are all more stable than the eastern wilderness. Lu Changkong and the others were dumbfounded as though they had lost their souls. They didn't know when the lightning tribulation ended, and they also didn't know when Chu Yang came out from the jade bottle. Only after their faces were slapped did they regain their senses. Then, they heard a voice in their ears, "Hey, the Lord is speaking to you. You actually dare to pretend that you didn't hear him?" It really wasn't an act. Lu Changkong and the others were about to cry. "Omnipotent Lord, please be merciful." After Lu Changkong and the others regained their senses, they knew that their deaths were coming. Today they had seen too many secrets of this native, but they couldn't summon any thoughts of resistance. They could only crawl on the ground and beg. "Lord, please think about it first." Chu Yang kept them into the jade bottle, then flew towards the island where the 4 sovereigns of the 4 countries were at. After killing all of them, it was time for him to go to the eastern continent. That so-called Qian Zi of the eastern continent was like a demonic mountain pressing down on his heart. He didn't want to wait until Qian Zi found him, and he wouldn't be able to fight back. Chapter 949. As Chu Yang flew, he sensed his body. After the divine spirit and devil spirit formed their own world, he could be said to be at the peak of the 9th level of the soul circulation realm. It was just that he hadn't broken through yet. His current situation was akin to the crown prince controlling the entire kingdom and presiding over government affairs, but he had yet to ascend the throne and become the emperor. Thus, his status was still the crown prince. It was like Chu Yang's body hadn't evolved yet, but as long as he wanted to, he could break through at any time. Qian Zi wanted to leave his mark in the eastern wilderness. He wanted to build his own backyard, so how could Chu Yang let it go? If the heavens didn't take what was given, he would be punished. Thus, he had to take the eastern wilderness. After thinking about it carefully, there was no one in the eastern wilderness that could make him apprehensive. Although there was still one more bone in his body, he didn't feel that this bone was too hard. On the contrary, the way Lu Chongkong and the others dealt with them gave him a headache. They had already surrendered and submitted. His womanly benevolence flared up, and his blade wasn't fast enough to kill them. Whether you die or not, it's up to you. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Chu Yang had a plan. After finding the two elders, he asked Lu Chongkong, who was in the jade bottle, about the situation on the other side of the eastern continent. There were a total of 8 people: Si Haomiao, Li Liangbua, Ouyang Li, Wang Sanshi, and the others. Only Si Haomiao had surpassed the 5th level of the Soul Fusion realm, reaching the 7th level. The rest were all below the Soul Fusion realm. Flying at high speed, the moving island in the ocean once again entered Chu Yang's eyes. At the center of the island, there was a splendidly decorated palace. The floor was made of crystal and there wasn't a speck of dust. There were beautiful girls wearing light muslin walking around. It was incomparably extravagant. At this moment, both sides seemed to have finished their discussion. Not to mention the people from the eastern wilderness, Si Haomiao, Ouyang Li, Li Liangbua, and the others from the east continent, each had 2 seductive women by their side, serving and massaging them. They were so soft and fragrant that it was simply intoxicating. Really good. This lord has only left for a short while, and you guys are already doing it. Chu Yang was extremely impressed. The island was surrounded by the sea, and it was not easy to find such a beauty in such a short period of time. But in the end, he was speechless. Perhaps they had prepared this long ago to celebrate. I'm here. Shua. Chu Yang directly flew into the main hall, immediately shocking Lu Chongkong and the others inside the jade bottle. They were not the only ones. How did he know? Why is he here? At this moment, Jun Tianhen, Jun Tiannu, the 4 kings of the 4 countries, and the monarchs of the monster race were all shaken. They were extremely shocked, and their hearts were filled with fear. Si Haomiao and the others were shocked as well. They had been very discreet with the local tyrants in the eastern wilderness, but they hadn't expected that they would still be discovered in the end, and even be attacked. Chu Yang floated in midair, his body blooming with sacred light. He said in a sacred and incomparably solemn voice, I must be God, otherwise I can't completely represent God. I must be devil, otherwise I can't completely represent devil. I must be human, otherwise I can't completely represent devil. What was going on? Jun Tianhen, Jun Tiannu, the 4 emperors of the 4 countries, and the kings of the demon tribe were all stunned and bewildered. They couldn't understand Chu Yang's intention at all. Chu Yang was a fool, an idiot. He had come here alone to throw away his life. Chapter 950. Is Chu Yang really here to die? Chu Yang was definitely not a fool. He was a bastard, a shameless villain, a devil incarnate. No single word was enough to describe him. Jun Tianhen, Jun Tiannu, and the others understood this very well. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fought with the people from the East Continent today. However, no matter how talented Chu Yang was, he was only at the peak of the ascending soul realm. How could they not kill him with so many people? The people from the East Continent were even more terrifying. What is he planning? Jun Tianhen and the others couldn't help but narrow their eyes at this moment. The whole hall fell silent. All the beauties in the hall looked at the newcomer with watery eyes. They felt that he was either a big shot or a lunatic. Si Haomiao, Li Liangbua, Ouyang Li, Wang Sanshi, and the others were all shocked and doubtful. The other party was so ridiculing that he didn't take them seriously at all. What on earth was he relying on? I'm pre-existing. I've existed since the beginning. I'm absolute. I'm unchanging. I'm eternal. I'm the only unchanging truth. I'm the creator of all things in the universe. I'm the light. I'm your light. I'm the source of life. I give you life. I'm omniscient. I'm omnipotent. I'm your Lord. Please listen to my will. Only Chu Yang's sacred voice and the so-called solemn voice floated in the entire hall. Then, he looked at the 4 emperors of the 4 countries, the kings of the monster clan, Jun Tianhen, Jun Tiannu, and the others. You've betrayed the glory of the Lord, but the Lord is merciful. Pray to your Lord sincerely and repent sincerely. The Lord will pardon you, Amitabha. You're the Chu Yang that the elders were talking about. See how Miao finally spoke. He really didn't know where this native of the eastern wilderness got his confidence from and dared to be so arrogant. At least, he couldn't see it or find it at the moment. Lost sheep of the East Continent, the Lord has seen your sorrow and despair. Remember the Lord's real name. The Lord will save you. Chu Yang said Amitabha again. At this moment, if those who truly believed in this doctrine saw him messing around like this, they would definitely want to beat him to death. Amitabha Buddha was connected to the Lord. See how Miao was enraged and couldn't help but snort coldly. Ouyang Li, Wang Sanshi, Li Lianghua, and the others also voiced their opinions. Acting all mysterious, I'd like to see what you're capable of. A mere aboriginal dares to toy with us like this? You don't know the meaning of death. The so-called geniuses, the so-called evildoers, are only in the dry well that is the East Continent. In the East Continent, you are nothing but a frog at the bottom of the well. At this moment they all revealed the disdain and contempt of the Eastern wilderness, revealing their original faces. These people were truly angered by Chu Yang's words. They felt that he was looking down on them too much. As for Chu Yang calling himself the Lord, in their eyes, that was definitely a kind of ignorance. If they were in the East Continent, Chu Yang would definitely be beaten to death immediately. Not even dregs would be left. The Lord said that the mouth is the mouth of sin. Pitiful people, listen to the Lord's teachings. The Lord will guide you out of the sea of suffering. Chu Yang took out the jade bottle and let Lu Chongkong and the others out. Immediately, he heard Si Hao Miao and the others cry out in surprise. Junior brother Chongkong. Chongkong, you, at this moment, Si Hao Miao and the others only felt that their scandal had been exposed. They were extremely shocked and panicked. Lu Chongkong was actually no match for this aboriginal of the eastern wilderness and was even captured alive. Si Hao Miao and the others couldn't believe it. They felt that they might be seeing things. They rubbed their eyes, but when they saw it again, nothing had changed. Perhaps this was just a nightmare. They slapped their faces again, but when they woke up from the dream, it was still the same. They even clearly felt that Lu Chongkong and the others' cultivation had fallen to the origin martial realm. How was this possible? Chapter 951. Go, my believers! Chu Yang said to Lu Chongkong and the rest, Go and spread the light of the Lord, the gospel of the Lord, and the will of the Lord. Save those who are suffering and tell them that the glory of the Lord will shine upon them and grant them bliss and eternal life. Lu Chongkong and the rest prostrated themselves before Chu Yang, causing Si Hao Miao and the rest to widen their eyes. Their expressions were as though they had seen a ghost. When Jun Tianhen, Jun Tiannu, and the rest saw this scene, they were shocked and at the same time, thoughts ran through their minds. This was especially so for Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu. They were very sure that they had underestimated Chu Yang. Allah, Allah, my life, because of love, please forgive me for reciting your holy name 1,000 times a day. Because you are everything to me, my sustenance and sustenance. My heart is envious. My body is medicine, my soul is eternal power. No one and nothing can compare to you. Lu Chongkong and the rest prostrated themselves on the ground. After praising Chu Yang sincerely, they went straight to Si Hao Miao and the rest. Amitabha. Lu Chongkong's face was solemn and full of glory as he said to Si Hao Miao, Listen to the Lord's will. Senior brother, I will lead you, a foolish person, a lost sheep, to find the light. Si Haomiao's mouth twitched. Lu Changkong actually called a native of the eastern wilderness his lord. This was the most bizarre thing he had ever encountered in his life. Even Qian Zi did not receive such treatment. However, it was only for a moment before an extremely shocked expression appeared on his face. It was as though he had heard some shocking news. Lu Changkong's voice sounded again. The Lord is omnipotent and omniscient. Your fear, your despair, your darkness, as long as you believe in the Lord, everything will cease to exist. Senior brother, please ask for forgiveness from the Lord for your offense just now. You are ignorant, you are deceived, you are foolish. The merciful Lord only has compassion for you, Amitabha. Lord? Chu Yang was the Lord, the eternal Lord, the omnipotent Lord, the supreme Lord. Jun Tianhen and Jun Tianyu were completely dumbfounded. Their brains had turned to mush. They knew nothing about the cause and effect of this. They only knew that even their ancestor, the great emperor of the eastern wilderness, did not have such glory. The 4 emperors of the 4 kingdoms and the kings of the demon tribe knew how arrogant the people from the east continent were. The word aboriginal was the best proof. However, they were so arrogant, but now they were so humble in front of Chu Yang. As for Chu Yang, he was watching all of this with great interest. He felt that it was very interesting, and something even more interesting might happen very soon. Junior brother, don't say such disgusting things. He's just a native of the eastern wilderness. So what if he's the son of the eastern wilderness? The son of the eastern wilderness. Si Haomiao's words stirred up 1,000 waves, and it could be said to be earth-shattering. Chu Yang was actually the son of the eastern wilderness. At this moment, whether it was Jun Tianhen, Jun Tianyu, the 4 emperors of the 4 kingdoms, or the kings of the demon tribe, their nerves were numb. They finally had an answer. Why was Chu Yang so monstrous and heaven-defying? Why could he act so unscrupulously in the eastern wilderness? The son of the eastern wilderness was blessed by the eastern wilderness. How could he not be heaven-defying? Senior brother, be careful. He has also destroyed Qian Zi's spiritual imprint and taken away the origin of the dimensional world. Jun Tianhen and Jun Tianyu did not hear the latter part of Lu Changkong's words. They only heard the first part. Chu Yang had destroyed Qian Zi's spiritual imprint. How could this be? Chapter 952. My followers, you really don't disappoint me. Chu Yang smiled at Lu Changkong and the others. You are so pitiful. I originally didn't have the heart to kill you. But now, you have solved my problem of being soft-hearted. Thank you. Lord? Si Haomiao coldly snorted. Native, you think you're so great just because you have a divine demon martial spirit? You think I can't do anything to you just because you're the son of the eastern wilderness? Si Haomiao sneered. You're really naive. Hee hee. Chu Yang laughed. He pointed at the 4 emperors of the 4 states and said, You country bumpkins of the eastern continent, are you deliberately saying this to these rotten potatoes and rotten eggs? Tell them that they will definitely die if they know my secret. That's right. Today, all of you will die. He admitted it directly. Everyone here had to die. Are you relying on those 2 soul amalgamation realm old fools outside? Si Haomiao coldly said. They're just 2 old fools. Can soul amalgamation realm natives of the eastern wilderness be called soul amalgamation realm? You can call them in. They can't know my secret, so they're outside. Chu Yang casually looked at Si Haomiao. Lord is omnipotent. Do I need to borrow the hands of others to deal with you? Eastern continent country bumpkins, you think too highly of yourself. Lord is benevolent and will give you a chance to commit suicide. Hurry up. Shameless boasting. 1. With a buzzing sound, a large cauldron suddenly appeared and hung above Si Haomiao's head. Strands of chaotic aura poured down. The aura was as heavy as a mountain and as vast as the ocean, causing the space around them to become incomparably firm. It was as if a pile of mud had been turned into divine iron and immortal gold, changing the space-time of the eastern wilderness. At the same time, it spread out endlessly, as if it was controlling the entire eastern wilderness with the cauldron as the center. It replaced the eastern wilderness's origin and became the center of the eastern wilderness. Within the cauldron, a dimensional world was faintly visible. Chu Yang observed it for a moment. He felt that this world was much more powerful than the space-time of the eastern wilderness. The eastern wilderness is so weak that it's laughable. The aura of the world cauldron is actually in the form of primal chaos chi. Is this primal chaos chi something you can see whenever you want to? See how Miao's face was full of disdain. It was as if a pile of shit in the East continent would become gold in the eastern wilderness. As for the chaotic chi, it was impossible to even think about it in the East continent, let alone mention it because it was impossible to obtain. However, it had appeared in the eastern wilderness. World cauldron? Chu Yang's pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression turned solemn for the first time. At this moment, he could clearly feel that the space in the hall had changed greatly. He could faintly feel that the space here was rejecting him. Originally, this kind of sign appeared on the people from the East continent, but now it appeared on him. The other party had turned the tables. Native, do you know how powerful it is now? See how Miao's expression became even more disdainful. He originally thought that Chu Yang was very powerful, but now it seemed that he was just an idiot who got carried away. Natives will always be natives. You really think that Qian Zi didn't take precautions against the birth of a lucky person in the eastern wilderness? You're like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Ignorant. Senior brother Hao Miao, Lu Chongkong said ferociously. Senior brother, this native probably doesn't know how powerful it is. Why don't you introduce him to such a noble thing? No matter what, it's time for us to return the favor to him. You're right. See how Miao laughed mockingly. Native, let me introduce you. The world cauldron, as the name suggests, is related to the world. As for the effect of the world cauldron, it's used to suppress other dimensional worlds. Chapter 953. The World Cauldron. There was such a thing. Chu Yang's heart trembled, but at the same time, he was more or less convinced. If it wasn't so, how could the so-called Qian Zi plunder so many dimensional world origins? Naturally, he didn't know anything about this. He had only heard about imprinting his imprint into the eastern wilderness's origin from the people from the East continent. Chu Yang had used his godly demon martial soul to deduce how to imprint his primordial spirit imprint into the eastern wilderness's origin. Generally speaking, the stronger the world, the more difficult it was to imprint one's primordial spirit imprint into the origin. One would also suffer a great backlash. For example, it was impossible to imprint one's primordial spirit imprint into the origin of the eastern wilderness. It was tantamount to courting death. If anyone dared to imprint their primordial spirit imprint into the eastern continent's origin, they would immediately die. There was no doubt about that. The eastern wilderness was a weak world. Its origin was too weak, so it was possible to imprint one's primordial spirit imprint into it. Once this was done, Chu Yang's primordial spirit would be branded with the origin of the eastern wilderness, and his connection with the eastern wilderness would become closer and closer. In the end, he would be able to refine the entire eastern wilderness and turn it into his own backyard and territory. However, this required time. The primordial spirit imprint was like a seed. When it sprouted and grew into a towering tree, it would be possible to cover the entire eastern wilderness. The eastern wilderness was a weak world, so time would pass faster. However, the eastern wilderness was originally a continent of the origin world. If one imprinted their primordial spirit into it, they could use the eastern wilderness to form a close connection with the origin world's origin. They could even use the eastern wilderness to infiltrate the origin world's origin. Qianzi's scheme was huge. The world cauldron had indeed exceeded Chu Yang's expectations, but there were always gains and losses. While the world cauldron was suppressing the eastern wilderness's origin, Chu Yang could invade the eastern wilderness's origin and imprint his own primordial spirit imprint. Therefore, Chu Yang didn't panic. After careful observation, he used his martial soul to communicate with the eastern wilderness's power of laws. As soon as he came into contact with it, he felt that it was extremely easy. There was almost no obstruction at all because the source of the eastern wilderness was now entangled with the world cauldron. The strength of the world cauldron made the eastern wilderness's origin unable to resist the invasion of Chu Yang's essence spirit. Native, do you know how powerful I am now? I'll give you a chance. Kill yourself and don't dirty my hands. See how Miao returned Chu Yang's mockery one by one. Ha ha! Lu Chongkong, Ouyang Li and the others immediately burst into laughter, especially Lu Chongkong's group. At this moment they were incomparably happy. What could make them happier than killing a supreme genius, a supreme monstrous genius? Ha ha! Chu Yang also laughed loudly. Foolish people, lost sheep, please remember that the Lord is omnipotent. In addition, the Lord expresses his gratitude to all of you. The lost sheep of the eastern wilderness originally resisted me, but now it completely agrees with me. Whoosh! As he laughed, Chu Yang's martial soul flew out and disappeared into the void. Not good, he's going to imprint his essence spirit into the eastern wilderness's origin. Lu Chongkong and the others were shocked. Foolish people, the Lord tells you to study hard. Only then will you know what it means to be the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Chu Yang pretended to be a charlatan again. The Lord is omniscient. I already know everything that happened today. It's just a futile struggle. See how Miao's expression didn't change. So what if you imprint your essence spirit into the eastern wilderness? The world cauldron can suppress the eastern wilderness, so why can't it suppress you? Fool! Senior martial brother, this native can kill Qian Zi's spiritual imprint. Lu Chongkong's single eye flashed fiercely. For safety's sake, it's better to kill him as soon as possible to prevent any unforeseen events. Junior martial brother Chongkong, you're right. There's no meaning in torturing a native. It's just lowering our status for no reason. See how Miao ordered. Seniors of the Eastern Wilderness, please work together to kill this bastard. We are willing to listen to the young master's orders. 1. 5 Poison Sovereign Fist. Sovereign descends on the Eastern Wilderness. Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu couldn't wait for Chu Yang to die, so they were the first to attack. They punched out, and a great emperor's figure appeared behind each of them. Under the situation where the Eastern Baron's origin was suppressed by the world cauldron, the great emperor's figure was even more solid, and the pressure was even more overwhelming. Chapter 954. Rumble. Dragons' roars rang out as the 4 emperors of the 4 countries also attacked. The 4 of them worked together and blasted out a golden dragon. The berserk energy caused the entire palace to explode. Cries of alarm rang out as the women who served them fled in panic. Rumble. The Gold Rock King reverted to his true form, 100 zhang long gold rock bird. His feathers shot out like golden swords. Rumble. The Lion King unleashed the secret technique of the Lion Clan, Lion Roar. The sound wave was like a huge divine sword, slashing forward. The 3-eyed king opened his third eye, and the Tiger King's killing intent soared. On the other side, see how Miao's group's attacks were even more shocking. Perhaps it was because they had entered the Eastern Barren Territory from the East Continent, but the binding force of the Eastern Barren Territory was too weak. When they suddenly attacked, they either lifted a mountain or picked up the sun, moon, stars, oceans, and lakes as weapons to attack. Their attacks were like the sun and moon, mountains, rivers, lakes, and oceans moving together, covering the sky and the earth. The void trembled and cracked. Clearly, it had exceeded the limit of the eastern wilderness. Jun Tianhen, Jun Tiannu, the four sovereigns of the four countries, and the kings of the monster race were all shocked to see this. At this moment, they were even more in awe of these people from the East continent. They became even more humble and thus worked even harder. Their attacks changed the color of the sky. The entire island shook and even started to crack. Chu Yang's expression changed slightly. Such an attack also made him terrified. The East continent was indeed different from the Eastern wilderness. The difference between the Eastern wilderness and the East continent was too great. The more he understood this, the more anxious he was to go to the East continent. However, he had to solve the problem in front of him first. Those who believe in me will have endless bliss. Those who don't will have endless pain. Chu Yang activated his devil martial spirit without thinking. Under the activation of his devil martial spirit, a faint door appeared behind him. Demonic chi rushed out of the door like a black hole, and a vortex appeared. Endless evil, destructive, extreme, and death auras appeared. It was the gateway to hell, the gateway to the hell of euphoria. As soon as it appeared, the heaven and earth suddenly fell silent. The attacks that covered the sky and the earth were originally collapsing, and it was like the end of the world, but in front of this door, they suddenly became a few buzzing mosquitoes and flies. Under the protection of the gates of hell, none of the attacks could hurt Chu Yang. All of them were sucked in by the gates of hell. This, Si Hao Miao and the others were stunned. Those who believe in me shall find boundless bliss. Those who do not believe in me shall find boundless pain. While they were still in a daze, Chu Yang once again unleashed a torrent of demonic sounds that penetrated into their brains. He wanted to demonize them and control their minds. Under the attack of the devil martial spirit, everything was out of Chu Yang's control. He suddenly realized that a weapon had appeared in his hand, a blood-red weapon. It was a scythe with a long handle. The scythe was blood-red in color and was condensed from spirit chi. However, it was a weapon that could harvest lives and souls. Grim Reaper's Scythe. How is this possible? How could the Grim Reaper's Scythe appear in the mortal world? Even in the eastern wilderness, this shouldn't be possible. Chu Yang had not even swung the Grim Reaper's scythe, but Si Hao Miao and the others felt as if their heads had already been cut off. Their souls trembled, and they lost the courage to resist. In the name of the Lord, I harvest lives and souls. Chu Yang still spoke in a mocking tone, but Si Hao Miao and the others could no longer detect any mockery. They felt as if they were speaking the underworld language of hell. Whoosh! The blood-red scythe, which was surrounded by demonic chi and murderous aura, was swung out, drawing a blood-red arc in the air. It was an arc of death, but also an arc of harvest. Ah! Chu Yang's slash caused Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu's flesh and blood to wither away. However, the Grim Reaper's scythe had 2 pieces of flesh and 2 souls. That was where the blood-curdling screams had come from. The Grim Reaper's scythe harvested lives and souls like a farmer harvesting rice. The first thing that Chu Yang wanted to do was to kill Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu, as an explanation to the millions of souls. He would definitely do what he said, and it had been a long time. At this moment, he had finally fulfilled his promise. He did not break his promise to the dead. His heart was suddenly relieved. Even if there were more unforeseen events today, this matter had finally been completed. Chu Yang was confident that he could wipe out everything, but he also believed that Si Hao Miao and the others still had other means. Chapter 955. Boom. After Chu Yang used the death scythe to reap the lives and souls of Jun Tianhen and Jun Tiannu, the shock led to a short pause. Then, the battle became even fiercer. Si Hao Miao, Ouyang Li, the 4 sovereigns of the 4 nations, the demon clan, and more than a dozen experts from the East continent and the top existences in the eastern wilderness besieged Chu Yang. They attacked Chu Yang with all kinds of killing moves. Under the protection of the Gate of Hell, Chu Yang surged out of the devil chi. The void was as dark as ink, and ghosts cried and demons appeared. Inside the Gate of Hell, there were many devil shadows. The void where he was seemed to have become hell. Many attacks bombarded Chu Yang's body, but none of them could break through his defense. All of them were absorbed by the Hell's portal and sent into hell. Thunder River Fall. Li Liangbua of the East Continent attacked. As soon as he attacked, a heavenly river appeared in his hand. The heavenly river rumbled with thunder and lightning, and struck down at Chu Yang. Chu Yang didn't move. He hooked the death scythe, and the heavenly river was hooked over like an ear of rice and sent into the Gate of Hell. The world force of the eastern wilderness was weak. When the people from the East Continent cast their spells, they were magnificent and powerful. However, under the guidance of the devil martial soul, the death scythe appeared in Chu Yang's hand. It was something that shouldn't appear in this world. In comparison, their spells were childish and ridiculous in front of the death scythe. Whoosh! Chu Yang's body moved at high speed, and there were many phantoms. He was more and more compatible with the eastern wilderness. As he moved, he seemed to have jumped through space. The death scythe hooked over. Li Liangbua's arm was hooked. His arm was cut off, and his soul was hooked out at the same time. One of the people from the East Continent died immediately. Sly Poison Sword. At this moment, the rest of the people from the East Continent were frightened and completely exploded. A strange-looking weapon appeared in Wang Sanchi's hand. It was curved like a dragon or a snake, and poisonous gas was emitting from it. An ancient word, poison, could be vaguely seen on the weapon. The twisting and turning of the word seemed to be a snake or a snake's den. Eastern Purple Chi Hammer. Ouyang Li held a big purple hammer in his hand. As soon as it appeared, purple chi billowed and formed a purple chi smoke that soared into the sky. The hammer seemed to weigh thousands of pounds. It was heavier than a mountain and star. There were many profound meanings in it. And each of them seemed to contain an unfathomable realm. The two divine weapons pierced through the air toward Chu Yang. Chu Yang immediately activated the sickle of the god of death in his hand and blocked horizontally. As soon as they came into contact with each other, the two divine weapons were immediately corroded by the demonic aura. In fact, they even let out wails of agony. The artifact spirits within them were also severely injured, and the light on them immediately dimmed. The two of them hurriedly retreated. Boom! The four sovereigns, the kings of the monster race, and the rest of the people from the East Continent also attacked. After their attacks, Si Hao Miao appeared. Si Hao Miao appeared behind Chu Yang silently. He held the sun in one hand and the moon in the other and attacked Chu Yang at the same time. Although the Gate of Hell blocked the attack, a powerful force and profound mystery was transmitted from the Gate of Hell to Chu Yang's body. Golden Crow devours the sun. Heavenly Dog devours the moon. The two killing moves, the sun and the moon, were like yin and yang. They complemented each other and were extremely powerful. This attack seemed to have been planned for a long time. It seemed to have gathered all the power of a lifetime into one attack. Chu Yang's body shook violently and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was too weak. He had to admit that the people from the East Continent were indeed much stronger than the people from the Eastern Wilderness. If it were only the four sovereigns and the monster kings of the monster race, he would not care about them at all. He could kill them with the devil martial soul. Chapter 956. In the name of the devil, I summon hell. Hell descend. Rumble. Demonic chi surged out of the Gate of Hell, followed by the water of the yellow springs and hellfire. Howls of agony resounded, and demonic chi filled the air. Wung wung wung. At this time, the realm cauldron that suppressed the eastern wilderness vibrated, as if issuing a warning. The eastern wilderness's space-time was faintly becoming more compatible with Chu Yang. He was about to become one with the eastern wilderness. The 4 emperors of the 4 countries and the various kings of the Yao race were shocked. Not good. He's about to brand his nascent spirit into the eastern wilderness's essence. If he succeeds, he'll be the ruler of the eastern wilderness. They immediately saw the clues. Don't panic. It's fine even if he succeeds. With the realm cauldron suppressing the eastern wilderness, it's useless even if he's the ruler of the eastern wilderness. We can still suppress him. Although Si Haomiao said this, his expression was solemn. He had just launched a sneak attack on Chu Yang, but had failed. The so-called Gate of Hell was far more shocking than he had imagined. A divine sword appeared in his hand. He stabbed out, aiming for Chu Yang's throat. The so-called Gate of Hell has its limit. He won't be able to hold on for long. Kill him. Senior brother Haomiao is right. It's useless even if he places his nascent spirit in the eastern wilderness. Let's see how long he can hold on. Rumble. There was almost no gap. After Si Haomiao made his move, the others followed suit. Their attacks all gathered together and struck a single spot. It was an attack that could destroy heaven and earth. No one in the eastern wilderness could block. Crack, crack. A crack appeared on the Gate of Hell. This was the Gate of Hell, but this was the Gate of Hell in the eastern wilderness. The eastern wilderness was incomparably weak. In comparison, the hell in the eastern wilderness was also incomparably weak. Take the void in the eastern wilderness for example. A mere peak 5th level soul fusion realm cultivator couldn't withstand it. The eastern wilderness should have been destroyed in the first place, but it had been struggling at death's door until now. If not for the fact that it was connected to the origin world, it would have been destroyed long ago. A huge destructive force was transmitted to Chu Yang's body. His body trembled continuously, and his internal organs were injured. His body cracked open, and arrows of blood shot out. Just a little bit more, that so-called Hell's Gate will be broken. Si Haomiao was overjoyed. So what if he has the devil martial spirit? Everyone, let's work harder, chop him into pieces. 1. Just as the attack was about to reach them, the void suddenly trembled. Then, a demonic sound rang out, rolling into their ears, corroding their minds and mind. Foolish people, I am the Lord. I am omnipotent. I am immortal, and no one can kill me. At this moment Chu Yang also laughed. The place where he was standing had strangely become the center of the eastern wilderness. It was as if he was the origin of the eastern wilderness. All the attacks that landed on his body were channeled into the void and disappeared. Si Haomiao and the others' killing moves were about to break the Gate of Hell and kill Chu Yang. However, at this moment, the wind and clouds were unpredictable. Chu Yang's body underwent a great change. His body merged with the heavens and earth. He was the eastern wilderness, and the eastern wilderness was him. The god martial spirit had completely branded Chu Yang's primordial spirit into the origin of the eastern wilderness. Chapter 957. Rumble. In the next moment, a boundless amount of power erupted from his body. The laws of the world in the eastern wilderness surged over, forming the phantom of a continent behind his head. That was the manifestation of the eastern wilderness. Si Haomiao and the others were shocked. Then, they saw the entire eastern wilderness and the people in the eastern wilderness from Chu Yang's body. An indescribable aura also emerged from Chu Yang's body. In that instant, not only did Chu Yang see the entire eastern wilderness, but he also saw all the living beings in the eastern wilderness. All the living beings in the eastern wilderness also saw Chu Yang. I am the creator of all things in the universe. I am the light and I am your light. I am the source of life and I give you life. I am omniscient and omnipotent. I am your Lord. Please listen to my will. Chu Yang was pretending to be a fraud. Everyone in the eastern wilderness didn't see him. 5 Elements sect. When Xiao Guai saw how shameless Chu Yang was, it covered its eyes with its paws. It couldn't watch anymore. The parrot was also speechless. This immoral thing was too daring. Bragging like this was not how one should brag. If he did, he would be beaten to death. This evil creature. In the small courtyard where Chu Yang was staying in the Five Elements sect, a couple saw Chu Yang's behavior. The husband gritted his teeth fiercely. Qian Aoshue was beside the couple, and she was completely stunned at this moment. This couple was naturally Chu Yang's parents. Chu Yunlong really wanted to slap Chu Yang's face until it was crooked. What kind of nonsense was he saying? Didn't he know that trouble comes from the mouth? As for Qian Aoshue, she had complained about Chu Yang through Chu Na. However, as soon as she finished complaining, this happened. At this moment, Chu Na was naturally beside her parents. At the same time, there were two other people, Chu Fei and the Saint Child. The Zither-Tun Saint Child had sent a desolate demon egg to Chu Fei. When the two of them saw this scene, they couldn't help but be shocked. That little bastard, when I see him later, I'll definitely skin him alive. The more Chu Yunlong thought about it, the angrier he became. Father, I'm afraid you won't be able to find an excuse to skin your younger brother. Chu Fei smiled bitterly and said, I'm really the Lord now, the Lord of the Eastern Wilderness. It's not too much for him to say that. The Saint Child nodded. Through the image that Chu Yang saw, he said, those four wearing dragon robes should be Emperor Wei, Emperor Qi, Emperor Han, and Emperor Wu. There are also a few with soaring demonic auras. They should be the demon kings of the demon clan. As for the others, they should be from the East continent. A few of them are too strong. After a pause, he said, that cauldron should be the world cauldron, used to suppress the Eastern Wilderness. I'm afraid this battle will be very dangerous. Hearing this, Chu Yunlong immediately became nervous. The Grand Elder, the Golden Elder, the Adjudicating Elder, and the others were all shocked by this scene. They never expected that Chu Yang would be promoted to the Lord of the Eastern Wilderness. Even more so, they didn't expect that Chu Yang would be fighting a fierce battle with the four sovereigns of the four nations. Not far from Chu Yang's battle, the two elders and the hunchbacked patriarch were watching Chu Yang's battle. The two elders were extremely anxious. Patriarch, are we really not going to help the young master? The two elders were anxious. It was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Chu Yang's situation was really worrying. What are you worried about? The patriarch smiled. I couldn't see through his divine demon martial soul before. These small fries from the East continent are nothing. Is the East continent that great? Just wait and see, this kid definitely has some tricks up his sleeve. After a pause, he said, immediately send the news back and tell this kid's father. After this battle is over, tell him to kick this kid to the East continent no matter what. Otherwise, if he advances in the Eastern Wilderness, our young master will be destroyed. Yes, Patriarch. Chapter 958. Don't panic. I've said it before. Even if he occupies the source of the Eastern Wilderness, it's useless. We have the World Cauldron and can suppress the Eastern Wilderness. We can also suppress him. See how Miao had to speak to calm the crowd. Even he was shocked, let alone the others. The moment Chu Yang became the master of the Eastern Wilderness, the aura he released was too shocking. After all, as the master of a world, no matter how weak the world was, he still had supreme divine might and could dominate everything. Yes, don't be scared by a mere native. Ouyang Li grinned. He's just a chicken raised in a chicken coop outside a well. If he's scared, what can he do even if he's fierce? Junior brother Ouyang is right. He's just a mere native. Don't be confused. The Eastern Wilderness is too weak. At most, it can withstand a 5th-level soul fusion realm expert. How much ability can the so-called master of the Eastern Wilderness have? Ridiculous. This native really thinks he's the master. But he's just the master of a chicken coop. Wang Sanshur and the others, after see Hao Miao and Ouyang Li, calmed down and sneered. Although the words of the 4 emperors of the 4 countries and the Gold Rock king of the demon race were harsh to the ears, Si Hao Miao and the others were speaking the truth. They also relaxed and even smiled. Wang. At this time, the world cauldron trembled again. It was unknown how much more intense it was than before. It trembled as if it was shivering. It was like a child meeting an evil spirit, letting out a terrifying scream. Not good. He's using the source of the eastern wilderness to connect to the main world. If he succeeds, the main world's laws will descend and we'll all die. Si Haomiao sensed the world cauldron and his face immediately showed a horrified expression. Attack quickly. We must kill him before that happens. Si Haomiao was completely panicked. He took the lead and with a bang, his entire body emitted fierce flames. When the island's ground touched the flames, it instantly turned into magma. At this moment, Si Haomiao was like a sun. Sky burning fist. Boom! The punch was like a volcanic eruption. Endless flames burned towards Chu Yang. Wherever it passed, the fragile void of the eastern wilderness was burned until it curled up and even burned through, revealing a hole. These holes were all spatial black holes. Woo. The sound of a spatial storm could be heard. Emperor's fist, suppressing all the geniuses, the unique and righteous. The 4 emperors of the 4 countries gathered in one place, combining their powers to form the figure of an emperor. A huge golden hand pressed down, overturning heaven and earth. The 9 dragons on it roared, their cries shaking the 9 heavens. Kill. At the same time, the Gold Rock King and the other monster kings of the monster race, as well as the others from the East Continent, no longer held back. They had to kill Chu Yang at all costs. The Lord is omnipotent, the Lord is supreme, the Lord is immortal and indestructible. Foolish people, you still don't understand. Quickly wake up. Chu Yang smiled and disappeared into the void. At this moment, the eastern wilderness was his domain. He felt as if he could control the space and time of the eastern wilderness. Boom! The void exploded and a spatial storm swept out. Those who couldn't escape in time immediately screamed. But what was shocking was that these people didn't die. The eastern wilderness is weak, but the spatial storm is also weak to this extent? Chu Yang was hidden in the void. He couldn't help but shake his head. Logically speaking, a spatial storm could instantly kill a soul amalgamation realm cultivator. But what he saw in front of him completely overturned his understanding. Native, do you really think that I can't do anything to you? Boom! Si Haomiao suddenly undid the seal on his body, and his cultivation rose to the 7th level of the soul amalgamation realm. The surrounding void couldn't withstand it and shattered, causing a spatial storm to appear. However, Si Haomiao was in the middle of the spatial storm and wasn't harmed at all. The entire eastern wilderness was like a chicken coop to the East Continent. Even if the chicken coop was destroyed, it wouldn't cause much harm to the people of the East Continent. Chapter 959. Ha ha! He couldn't help but laugh out loud. Native, you didn't expect this, did you? Even the spatial storm in the eastern wilderness can't do anything to me. You, the master of the eastern wilderness, are nothing. You're just an ant in front of me. Whoosh! Si Haomiao threw a punch at Chu Yang, who was hidden in the void. Immediately, that patch of space exploded into pieces. A spatial storm swept out and enveloped Chu Yang's entire body. After that, he disappeared. When the space closed and returned to normal, Chu Yang was nowhere to be seen. Si Haomiao scanned again and again with his divine sense, but he couldn't find Chu Yang at all. He laughed out loud again. Haha, natives are natives. You can't even withstand this bullshit spatial storm. You're nothing. He was overjoyed, and the pressure in his heart was released. Senior brother Haomiao, that native is dead? Lu Chongkong still couldn't believe it. After all, Chu Yang was just too shocking. Lu Chongkong and the others were only in the origin martial realm, so they didn't fight. That was why they were still alive. Of course. Si Haomiao smiled confidently and then shook his head. Qian Zi has his eyes on the eastern wilderness, but the eastern wilderness is just too weak. It's so weak that it's stupefying. The spatial storm is so weak. Qian Zi will probably have to spend a lot of effort to make the eastern wilderness his backyard. I'm afraid it won't make up for the losses. Buzz, buzz. The world cauldron trembled even more violently than the previous 2 times. There were even cracks on the cauldron. Si Haomiao's smile instantly froze on his face. He was almost scared out of his wit. How is this possible? How can this native contact the main world so quickly? Rumble. Just as he was about to die from shock, the world cauldron exploded. However, the void in the eastern wilderness was extremely firm. The world cauldron's explosion couldn't even shatter the void. The laws of the main world had descended. The Lord is omnipotent. You don't need to be surprised. This is the most basic ability of the Lord. At some point, Chu Yang had already appeared above Si Haomiao and the others. He began to judge them. 4 kingdoms, 4 emperors. The 4 of you have sullied the eastern wilderness. You must purify your impure bodies and impure souls. Pung. His words were like a law. With a bang, the white heavenly flames on the 4 nations burned them. After a few miserable shrieks, they were burned to ashes, not even leaving behind their souls. Gold Rock King, Lion King, Tiger King, Master says, quickly come to the bowl. A huge bowl appeared and streaks of worldly laws shot out, piercing through the 3 Yao Kings, directly wiping out their souls and collecting them into the bowl. 3-eyed King, the Lord has said that you can eat but can't. You are truly displeasing. He has bestowed upon you the reincarnation of a pig. Next time, you will be served on the dining table. A black hole, like a reincarnation black hole, sucked the 3-eyed King in. The 3-eyed King had no strength to resist at all. After being sucked in, he was spat out in the blink of an eye. The only difference was that he was now a dried corpse, one that had been weathered for thousands of years. The Lord has said, judgment, judgment of thunder. Guests from the East continent shall be granted eternal life and reincarnation under the thunder. Rumble. Thunder rumbled in the sky. The spear of judgment descended, instantly killing Si Haomiao. He was drowned in lightning and turned into ashes. The killing took only a few moments. The Lord has said, leave when the deed is done. Hide your achievements and fame. Whoosh. Chu Yang said as he disappeared in an instant. Bullshit. Show off. You will die if you don't show off, the hunchback tribe leader said to Chu Yang. As for the 2 tribe elders, they stared blankly in the direction Chu Yang had left. It was over just like that? Fast, it was too fast. Chapter 960. In the 5 Elements sect, when the parrot saw the final result, it jumped out and began to clamor incessantly. Wahahaha! Do you see the brilliance of this divine parrot? My lord, he is the Lord. You stupid people, you didn't even notice this divine bird's obvious warning. Now it's too late to flatter. Was it appropriate to forcefully explain and show off one's brilliance? The people of the 5 Elements sect were immediately speechless. Hearing the parrot's clamor, Chu Yunlong and his wife flew out. When they saw the parrot's smug face, they couldn't help but frown. Why did their son take in such a lousy bird? The parrot's divine sense was powerful, and it immediately noticed that it was being looked down upon. It glared at Chu Yunlong and said, Hey, old man, what's with your expression? Why don't you immediately shout my lord's true name? My lord is merciful and will give you tolerance and gospel. Old man. Chu Yunlong wanted to kill the parrot and eat it to go with wine. Old man, you're still not convinced. The parrot flew over and pointed at Chu Yunlong with its wing. Old man, quickly report your 18 generations of ancestors. This divine bird wants to see how such an ignorant person can appear at a time like this. I'm your lord's father, Chu Yunlong roared. The parrot disdainfully said, My lord's father, what are you, my lord's father? Isn't that the wicked father? How good can he be if he can give birth to such a wicked son like Chu Yang? After the parrot came to its senses, it began to sweat profusely. Whoosh! The parrot ran. My lord's father, the ignorant are innocent. Its voice floated from afar. It was really scared. Chu Yang was already so wicked that smoke was coming out of his mouth. How could his father be so wicked? Therefore, it missed the opportunity to welcome Chu Yang. The true Lord has arrived. Why don't you shout his name? The voice came out of the void, and Chu Yang appeared in front of his parents. He said with a smile, The Lord is here to bless you too with fortune as great as the East Sea and longevity as long as the heavens. Bang bang bang! Chu Yunlong directly lost his temper. He beat and kicked Chu Yang like a storm, while cursing, Who asked you to call yourself master? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to be so impudent? Who asked you to be so conceited? Ha ha! When the people from the 5-element sect saw this scene, they were stunned at first. Then, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. No matter how awesome the son was, he couldn't be as awesome as the father. The great master of the eastern wilderness could only scurry away like a rat in front of his own father. Chu Fei and the Zither-Tone Holy Son laughed when they saw Chu Yang screaming miserably. This was their shameless little brother. That was how he behaved. Qian Aoshue was gloating. When she saw this scene, she felt that she had found a way to deal with that bastard Chu Yang. As for Chu Na, she secretly went over and kicked Chu Yang's feet. In less than a year, Chu Yang had made her worry countless times. After a storm, Chu Yang was finally saved. He complained, Father, your son is now outstanding. I'm the great master of the eastern wilderness. You have to give me some face in front of others. Ha ha! The people from the 5-element sect immediately burst into laughter. Chu Yunlong seemed to be annoyed by Chu Yang's naughty appearance. He pointed at Qian Aoshue and shouted, Did you bully his daughter? You have to take responsibility for bullying her. Chu Yang jumped up. Father, you have to take responsibility for your words. I don't care about my face, but she does. Qian Aoshue's face was already red. I don't care about your nonsense. I have to take responsibility for bullying you. Chu Yunlong shouted again. Also, go to the East Continent immediately and bring back my other daughter-in-law. Got it, father. Chu Yang glanced at his father, and realized that his father's temper was unusually big. Usually, a round of punches and kicks would be enough to deal with him. Got it. Go now. Now. Chu Yang was stunned. What do you think? Chu Yunlong rolled up his sleeves and looked like he was going to do something big. Father, you don't have to be in such a hurry. If you're in a hurry to have a grandson, I still have a daughter-in-law here. Bang, bang, bang. Chu Yunlong directly went berserk. As expected of a wicked father. How cruel! The parrot was sweating in the distance. It was secretly glad that it ran quickly just now. Otherwise, it would definitely be dead. After being beaten for a while, Chu Yang said again, Father, even if I go to the eastern wilderness, I have to say goodbye to my friends. Give you half a day? After saying that, Chu Yunlong put his hands behind his back and walked away angrily. Was it necessary for him to shoot his mouth off? Chu Yang was speechless. He then looked in the direction his father left and said to himself, Father, I'm really going to the East Continent this time. Take care of yourself. Gong Sun Long. Qianzi. The world of the East Continent was definitely not comparable to the Eastern Wilderness. The Eastern Wilderness was too weak. Chapter 961. Outside the pavilion, by the side of the ancient path, fragrant grass stretched to the sky. The evening breeze brushed against the willow flutes, the sunset beyond the mountains. The horizon of heaven, the corner of earth, half of my friends are gone. Life is a rare gathering, only parting is common. May I know when you will return? There was no farewell, only a carnival. When Chu Fei, the saint child, and the others woke up, they did not feel sad or emotional at all, because they saw the disdain that Chu Yang left behind when he left. Uncultured dregs, this is a farewell poem. I will remember it well. In the future, don't embarrass yourself on parting occasions. Otherwise, when you reach the East Continent, don't say that I don't know you. For your salvation, this is all I can do. Goodbye, dregs. Chu Fei, the saint child, Chao Ju, the silver wolf, and the others could only smile bitterly at such a message. At this moment, Chu Yang had already flown across the entire eastern wilderness with the parrot, passing by Jinyuan City, Sea Demon City, and the sea region where Emperor Island was. Everything that had happened in the past appeared in his mind one by one, and it felt like a dream. Time seemed to have passed too quickly, and he felt a little emotional. He also felt a sense of emptiness in his heart. Lil Guai was not by his side. The Grand Elder said that Lil Guai was just like a baby now, and it was not suitable for it to leave. Little 5 and Little 6 were also not here. The two apes were on Emperor Island at this moment, and they were resurrecting with the help of the desolate demon eggs. Chu Yang gave away all 6 desolate demon eggs. Chu Yang was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he reached the end of the eastern wilderness, where the spatial barrier of the eastern wilderness was. Here, he fought with the people from the East Continent for the first time and took a large ship. Here, Chu Yang stopped in his tracks. He was reluctant to part with them. He did not know when he would be able to return to the East Continent. He could not help but look back in the direction of the eastern wilderness, silently gazing into the distance. Then, he resolutely turned around. Goodbye, eastern wilderness. Those were his last words. Then, he turned around and passed through the eastern wilderness's spatial barrier, disappearing from the eastern wilderness. During this time, the parrot called out, "Quack quack, East Continent, this divine bird is here. Wait for this divine bird to unify the East Continent." After passing through the spatial barrier, Chu Yang was greeted by complete darkness. The sun and moon did not shine, and everything was deathly still. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Chu Yang completely lost his sense of direction. Finally, he saw a glimmer of light off in the distance. He followed this trace of light and flew for an unknown distance across the east wasteland. Suddenly, that trace of light turned into a rope of light in his eyes. As it got closer, the rope of light turned into a huge heavenly pillar. After that, Chu Yang could no longer see its full appearance. He only saw that there were many space-time passages on it. They were like bubbles, constantly forming and bursting. This should be the only link between the eastern wilderness and the main world on the East Continent. The space-time passages on this link were too unstable. After experiencing it personally, he realized how dangerous it was. The space-time passages were constantly breaking and forming. Chu Yang observed for a while. The space-time passages on the belt could last for at most 3 minutes before they completely shattered. Fuck, am I going to the East Continent or am I going to die? Chu Yang looked at these space-time passages and felt his scalp tingle. The parrot was also sweating and felt very guilty. Master, why don't we go back home and go to the East Continent? What's so great about the East Continent? Everyone there is a bunch of country bumpkins. How can they be as high and mighty as the eastern wilderness? Chapter 962. Chu Yang pondered for a while. It was dangerous, but since his brother and the Zither Saint could go to the East Continent, it meant that it was possible to go to the East Continent with these unreliable spacetime passages. The spacetime passages break down very quickly, but the time it takes to reach the East Continent should be very short. I guess it'll take a blink of an eye. Only then would it make sense. However, it was still very dangerous. Chu Yang thought about it carefully and chose the most stable spacetime passage. He stepped into it with a slightly nervous heart. As soon as he entered, it was hazy. It was as if he was crossing the river of time. Spacetime was constantly changing, and he couldn't distinguish between east, west, north, and south. He had completely lost his sense of direction, and his perception was completely chaotic. After that, everything stabilized. Chu Yang felt that stars were flickering from time to time, and supreme figures were appearing. The scene was hazy, like a dream, and it made him feel bewildered. Boom! As space-time changed, the space-time passage suddenly trembled violently. All the strange phenomena disappeared, and all kinds of symbols flickered. Everything was chaotic to the extreme. "Master, this is bad. We're going to die." The parrot screamed, its voice trembling. Cracks had appeared on the walls of this space-time passage like porcelain, and it was about to collapse. Woo-woo! Strange whistling sounds were suddenly heard. This was caused by the space-time passage cracking, and violent spatial energy surging in. Whoosh whoosh! It seemed like a gust of wind was blowing, but Chu Yang was alarmed and quickly dodged. Then, he found that his sideburns had been cut, and a piece of his skin had been directly cut off. That was a violent spatial energy turbulence. If he had been a little later, his whole head would have been cut off. Damn it! This was completely different from what Chu Yang had expected. He had thought that as long as he stepped into the passage, he would be teleported to the East Continent in the blink of an eye. But now, how many blinks of an eye had passed? Bang! Chu Yang ran wildly, and a pair of light and dark wings appeared behind his back. As he flapped, it seemed as if heaven and hell were the source of power, increasing his speed to the extreme. He flew in the passage that was about to collapse. Whoosh! An expanse of flowing light flew over. That was a spatial fragment incomparably resplendent, but it was even more dangerous than a deadly weapon. Chu Yang flew at high speed, trying his best to dodge. But these spatial fragments were too dense. No matter how he dodged, it was useless. His ribs were still grazed. With a pew sound, blood splattered everywhere. With his powerful body, ordinary weapons would not be able to do anything to him, but a mere fragment was enough to seriously injure him. "Master, now is the time for you to display your omnipotence. You must charge out, or I will be consigned to eternal damnation." "I, the divine bird, am not immortal," the parrot cried out. More and more cracks appeared on the inner walls of the space-time passageway, and it was about to collapse. If it did, it would be a terrifying catastrophe. There was no doubt that this was caused by the chaotic spacetime. This link that connected the eastern wilderness and the East Continent passed through the entire chaotic sea of spacetime. Although Chu Yang hadn't seen the chaotic sea of spacetime, it definitely existed. At this moment, he should be passing through the spacetime chaotic seas. Chi! Another resplendent spatial fragment flew over, carrying chaotic spatial laws. It flickered with dazzling light, but it was terrifying. Chu Yang could no longer fly at his highest speed. He darted left and right, trying his best to dodge. His speed was greatly affected. Even so, there was still a cut on his shoulder, and blood was gushing out. Chapter 963. Buzz. The space-time tunnel began to collapse. Fortunately, it started from the back and chased after Chu Yang. Otherwise, he would have died without a doubt. The tunnel collapsed and even more chaotic space-time energy surged in. There were countless spatial fragments, and it was getting more and more dangerous. Chu Yang moved quickly. The light and dark wings on his back flapped continuously. He flew like a floating light, bypassing the space-time turbulence and moving forward with difficulty. "Master, we're almost there. We can see the exit. Just a little more and we'll be able to rush out." The parrot cried out again, but this time it was filled with joy. However, as soon as its voice fell, the tunnel in front of them rumbled loudly. The tunnel wall completely collapsed and a space-time storm surged in. The road ahead was almost cut off. The situation was extremely bad. How could they avoid it? The parrot froze. Boom! The space-time storm surged, and at the same time, the collapse of the space became even more severe. If it completely broke, the road ahead would be completely cut off. The road ahead was incomparably dangerous. If the space-time storm swept up, even a soul amalgamation realm expert would be instantly killed, not to mention Chu Yang. Damn God, I'll fight it out with you. Chu Yang immediately took out the big ship. This ship was used by East Continent's Qian Zi to transport the origin of the dimensional world to the eastern wilderness. He didn't believe that Qian Zi didn't consider the possibility of the space-time tunnel collapsing. Chu Yang directly entered the big ship. Immediately, the ship formed a protective shield and quickly rushed into the space-time storm, passing through the collapsed area. Rumble! A violent explosion came from behind and the space-time tunnel shattered even more. In an instant, the space-time tunnel was almost completely destroyed, forming a terrifying space-time turbulence. The space-time turbulence was incomparably terrifying. The ship was immediately damaged when it passed through. In just a moment, the protective shield on the ship had completely collapsed and the hull was already cracking. Master, the ship has cracked. The parrot cried out in alarm. Chu Yang's expression changed, but there was no other way. He desperately drove the ship forward, charging straight through without caring about anything else. Boom! Terrifying waves of energy slammed into the battleship, causing cracks to spread rapidly. It seemed like it would explode at any moment. Chu Yang was in a desperate situation, and he desperately tried to drive the battleship. The void trembled as chaotic space-time energy surged. In a blinding flash of light, a broken ship flew out of the spatial passage before it was completely destroyed and crashed into the ground. Rumble! With a loud boom, the heavens and earth shook as a huge explosion occurred. Energy surged, erupting with dazzling light. The ship was completely shattered, and powerful energy rushed out in all directions, flattening the surroundings, causing smoke and dust to soar into the sky. When everything calmed down, a huge crater appeared on the ground. With this crater as the center, large cracks tore open on the ground one after another, extending into the distance. It looked terrifying and shocking, as if meteorites from outer space had fallen here. At the bottom of the pit was the remains of the ship. There was a large bloodstain on the ship, and Chu Yang was lying there. His whole body was dripping with blood, and his body was almost twisted out of shape. He had suffered extremely serious injuries, and was already half dead. This divine bird is in so much pain. I almost lost my wings again. The parrot cried out miserably. Its whole body was dripping with blood, but all of them were superficial wounds. I survived. Chu Yang's whole body was in intense pain. Even the slightest movement caused spiritual energy to rush out of his body, and his body to spurt out blood. His injuries were too serious. He wanted to laugh out loud, but he didn't dare and forcibly stopped himself. He struggled to sit up, but found it difficult. His body was twisted, and many of his bones were broken. Blood was flowing out of his body, and his injuries were more serious than he had imagined. This divine bird is in so much pain. The parrot cried out in pain. After seeing Chu Yang's miserable state, it wanted to teach Chu Yang a lesson and then run away. After all, they had already arrived at the eastern continent, but it held back in the end. This was the first time it had seen Chu Yang in such a miserable state. Have we arrived at the eastern continent? Why do I feel like I'm still in the eastern wilderness? Chu Yang didn't feel the heaven and earth's restrictions increasing. He felt no different from being in the eastern wilderness. He clenched his teeth and forcefully circulated his spiritual energy to repair his injured body. He connected all of his broken bones together, and after a while, he sat up with difficulty. Afterward, he silently sensed that the spiritual energy here was extremely dense. It seemed as if the air was filled with spiritual energy, and it was constantly flowing into his body. The surroundings were magnificent, and the waterfalls were shining brightly. Dense mists rose in the air. We should be in the eastern continent, but this isn't the eastern continent. Chu Yang made this judgment. The eastern wilderness couldn't have such dense spiritual energy, and he had passed through the space-time passage. Chapter 964. After surviving the disaster, Chu Yang felt extremely exhausted. At the same time, he heaved a long sigh of relief. He stayed where he was and recuperated for 3 days and 3 nights. His injuries were all healed. Then, he walked forward with the parrot. After an unknown period of time, he saw a space barrier. He immediately understood that this area should be the buffer zone between the East Continent and the space-time tunnel. After passing through the space barrier, he should be in the East Continent. This space barrier was many times stronger than the one in the Eastern Wilderness. Chu Yang did not have the ability to pass through it. However, since he could enter and exit the Eastern Wilderness, there must be a way to pass through the space barrier. Sure enough, after searching for a while, he found a teleportation formation. He stepped into it. After a while, a vast and boundless world appeared in front of him. It was foggy in front of him. Bang! However, before he could sense it carefully, he suddenly felt a gravitational force acting on him. He could not stand up straight and sat down. At the same time, he also felt a fierce suppression. The inexplicable pressure of the Dharma was like a mountain pressing down on him. The parrot was even more miserable. The bird was almost directly squashed on the ground. It was already crawling on the ground. Is this the complete Dharma of heaven and earth in the East Continent? The Eastern Wilderness is incomplete and the Dharma of heaven and earth is very incomplete. However, it is different here. The unimaginable gravitational force and the fierce suppression of the Dharma of heaven and earth made Chu Yang feel that this world was extremely powerful. Rumble! Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the sky. The Dharma of heaven and earth exerted more pressure on Chu Yang. He could clearly feel that his cultivation was decreasing at a visible speed. The first world created by the divine demon martial soul, the world of light and the world of darkness, shrank rapidly until they became a black dot and a light dot. Then, they disappeared into the divine demon martial soul. The divine demon martial soul was also suppressed by the Dharma of heaven and earth. Its rank was constantly decreasing. This was obvious from his saber and sword martial soul and the flood dragon martial soul. The 3 martial souls rose to the 9th grade, and the 9 ranks of his martial soul fell directly. This situation continued. It can't be. The rules of heaven and earth in the East Continent are so ridiculous. Is it going to beat me back to my original form? Chu Yang was shocked. At the same time, he had a very bad premonition. After that, the grade of the fiend god martial spirits also plummeted. Soul ascension to the 9th grade. His soul had risen to the 8th grade. His soul had risen to the 7th grade. In the blink of an eye, the 9 grades of the divine and devil martial spirits were completely removed. The divine martial spirit turned back into the genius martial spirit, and the fool martial spirit turned back into the devil martial spirit. At this point, Chu Yang's cultivation level had already dropped to the spirit realm. However, this was not the end, and his cultivation level was dropping even more fiercely. The 9th level of the Chi Soul realm. The 8th level of the Chi Soul realm. 7th tier of the Chi Soul realm. Very quickly, he fell to the origin martial realm, and his cultivation was still falling. Rumble! In order to break through to the spirit realm, Chu Yang used his destiny martial soul to fill the chasm of the bridge of heaven and earth. From there, he obtained the path to heaven divine ability. However, at this moment, the bridge of heaven and earth collapsed, and the chasm appeared again. The path to heaven divine ability also disappeared completely. At this time, Chu Yang came to a realization. He realized that the reincarnation divine ability he obtained from sending millions of souls to reincarnation with the destiny twin martial soul had also disappeared. The chaotic body, in addition to swallowing the peacock demon core and obtaining the peacock's talent, formed the embryonic form of the five-colored divine light, and the five-colored divine ability had also completely disappeared. What the hell? The Dharma of heaven and earth in the East continent is so fierce. Are they going to deprive me of my cultivation? Chu Yang was a little flustered. These were all things that he had painstakingly cultivated. Chapter 965. 9th Level of the Origin Martial Realm. 8th Level of the Origin Martial Realm. 7th Level of the Origin Martial Realm. In the end, he was completely beaten back to his original state and his cultivation dropped to the first level of the Origin Martial Realm. Gotcha! With a crisp sound, Chu Yang suddenly realized that his interspatial ring had cracked. In the eastern wilderness, the interspatial ring could form a space, but in the East continent, it was absolutely impossible because the laws of heaven and earth here were countless times stronger than in the eastern wilderness. Spirit crystal! The spatial ring cracked open, revealing the item inside. Chu Yang's pupils shrank abruptly. The best spiritual crystal in the eastern wasteland had actually lost its luster in front of him at this moment. Then, it turned into a gray stone and even shattered into dust. The spirit crystal in the eastern wilderness was just dust in the East continent. Are you kidding me? In an instant, Chu Yang felt as if he had come from the underworld to the world of the living. The underworld money in the underworld was just a piece of waste paper in the world of the living. Shock! It was too much of a shock. This was simply unacceptable. Bang! 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 A few muffled sounds rang out. The 7 killing sword, 9 dragon cauldron and other soul reincarnation realm weapons that had been following Chu Yang directly exploded and turned into a pile of scrap iron. What shocked Chu Yang the most was that when he took out the heavenly rock feather, he realized that the heavenly rock feather had turned into a chicken feather. That is to say, the heavenly rock in the eastern wilderness is at most a fierce chicken in the East continent. Chu Yang was rendered speechless in an instant. His life had been completely turned upside down. Everything that he possessed had been stripped away at this moment. Not even a drop of it remained. Ascending Soul Realm, Chi Soul Realm, Origin Martial Realm. All 3 of his cultivations had been taken away. The 3rd cycle of the primitive martial, the 3rd cycle of the vital soul, the 3rd cycle of the ascended soul, the innate spirit body, the chaotic body, and the body of the fiend god had all been stripped away. He even discovered that the blade crystal, the earth water, and the skyfire of the sword had all become ordinary water and ordinary fire. Even the blade crystal and the serpent dragon martial soul that he had created from the 2 martial souls had become extremely transparent, as if they could vanish at any time. East continent, you idiot! You're so awesome. Hashtag $% hashtag $R%. Chu Yang began to curse. Every time he opened his mouth, he would use the 3-character classic. He would never repeat a single sentence. Right now, he was truly a billionaire. He had been stripped of all his assets and turned into a pauper. He had been reduced to 0 by the damned heavens. He had arrived in the East continent, and this was how the East continent welcomed him. After a period of time, Chu Yang found that the parrot was even more miserable than he was. It couldn't even speak human language. It had regressed to its original state. However, from its eyes, Chu Yang found that its intelligence hadn't decreased. He let out a long sigh of relief. So fucking ruthless. Chu Yang's mood couldn't be any worse. He felt his 2 martial souls and found that they hadn't been stripped of their most basic abilities. He couldn't help but feel relieved and let out a long sigh. Good, good. As long as I have the two martial souls, I can rise in the eastern wilderness. I can definitely rise in the East Continent. The damned heavens of the East Continent can't stop me. Now, Chu Yang thought that it was a miracle that he could defeat Si Haomiao, Lu Chongkong, and the others. However, when he thought about how he had been weakened in the East Continent, they must have been greatly suppressed in the Eastern Wilderness. Otherwise, based on the current situation, the blade crystal, the earth water, and the skyfire of the sword could all become ordinary water and ordinary fire. The heavenly Peng's feathers could even become chicken feathers. Lu Chongkong and Si Haomiao could crush him with a single finger. Defeat, very defeat, to defeat. Chu Yang adjusted his mood and then understood his own situation. Now, the five elements circulation heaven ring, the pentagram anti-heaven star, and the reincarnation gourd were showing their strength. Although the three of them were at the same level as Chu Yang's cultivation and their ranks were constantly declining, they still had their divinity. As long as Chu Yang recovered, their ranks would immediately rise. Chapter 966. If the world on the East Continent was a piece of software, then the Eastern Wilderness would be the software's loophole. Relying on this loophole, Chu Yang was able to easily cultivate the third transformation of the primitive martial, third transformation of the Qi soul, third transformation of the ascending soul, innate spirit body, primal chaos body, body of gods and devils, as well as the path to heaven and many other divine abilities. If he was in the East Continent, he wouldn't have been able to do it so easily. Not only was the Eastern Wilderness a loophole in the entire origin world, every living creature in the Eastern Wilderness was also a loophole in the origin world. Therefore, when the living creatures in the Eastern Wilderness entered the East Continent, the origin world of the East Continent immediately had to fix this loophole. Chu Yang's loophole was currently in the process of being fixed. Relying on his genius martial soul, Chu Yang could clearly feel a mysterious and profound aura circulating in his body. This was the origin world side, which was currently patching up the incomplete laws of heaven and earth of the Eastern Wilderness and weaving them into Chu Yang's body. After everything was done, the origin world would evaluate Chu Yang. In the East Continent, to what extent could Chu Yang cultivate and recover his cultivation? In the Eastern Wilderness, Chu Yang's cultivation was at least at the peak of the 9th level of the soul circulation realm. However, in the origin world of the East Continent, Chu Yang would only be able to recover his cultivation to the 3rd level of the Qi soul realm. The hunchbacked old man, who was also the patriarch of Chu Yang's clan, now understood why he had to go to the East Continent to break through to the soul circulation realm. The primitive martial realm, Qi soul realm, and ascending soul realm only involved the foundation of the martial Tao. In the East Continent, he would come into contact with the laws of the origin world, which was equivalent to a solid foundation. However, in the soul circulation realm, which involved the 7 fragments of the soul, it was different. Chu Yang couldn't deduce what would happen in the process. Little bastard, don't panic. In a few days, wait for this damned god to finish patching you up and you'll recover quickly. Chu Yang explained the situation to the parrot in detail. The parrot let out a sigh of relief like a human. Then, its mood suddenly relaxed. Goo goo. Chu Yang had originally planned to stay put and wait for his cultivation base to recover before taking action and making contact with the East Continent. Otherwise, with his and the parrot's current cultivation bases, they would be inferior to even weaklings. If they didn't get eaten by demonic beasts, they would be bullied to death. However, after his cultivation had dropped to the 1st level of the primitive martial realm, Chu Yang quickly felt hungry, just like the parrot. A man and a parrot could only look for food carefully. But after walking for a while, they found that there were people nearby. Then, they observed again and found that there was a large village in the mountain forest. However, Chu Yang and the parrot didn't go over. Both of them were extremely black-bellied and pessimistic. They believed that the entire world was dark. The parrot felt like it was going to be eaten, and Chu Yang felt like it was going to be hacked to death. Being hungry is healthier. The parrot agreed with Chu Yang's words. They were unfamiliar with this place, so it was best to be careful. It nodded repeatedly. In any case, it would rather starve than be roasted and eaten. However, when Chu Yang was about to return to the mountain forest, he suddenly found a group of people who seemed to have just returned from hunting. At this time, it was too late for him to hide. There were more than 20 people in this group, both young and old. They were talking and laughing. Among them, the best cultivation base seemed to be at the 7th level of the Chi Soul realm. Just as Chu Yang thought, this group of people had indeed just returned from hunting. They had a lot of prey. There was a 30-meter-long wild boar, a 5 to 6-meter-long fierce tiger, and a 10-meter-long snake. This group of hunters was led by a one-armed middle-aged man. In addition to the main hunting force, there were also some 11 or 12-year-old youths in the group. This was obviously to increase their experience and to train their courage. "Uncle Hu, there's a person over there." Suddenly, a child pointed and shouted. Hearing this, everyone looked over and found that Chu Yang was covered in blood. His cultivation base was pitifully low, and he looked extremely unfamiliar. The one-armed middle-aged man looked straight at Chu Yang and said, "You came from the eastern wilderness. How did he know?" Chapter 967. Don't panic. The one-armed middle-aged man smiled kindly and pointed at the village in front of them. "Do you know what this village is called?" The middle-aged man smiled, and the group of people also smiled kindly. Chu Yang was a little puzzled. Before he could speak, the one-armed middle-aged man smiled and said, "This village is called the Barren Village, as in the eastern wilderness. Our ancestors came from the eastern wilderness, just like you. Every year we see many like you, so you don't have to be surprised." Ha ha. After the group of people heard this, many of them laughed again. "You have such a strong desolate aura, who can't tell? It's okay here, but if you were in other places, you'd be looked down upon." Desolate aura? Chu Yang was stunned again. The one-armed middle-aged man nodded. "Those who come from the eastern wilderness have a unique aura, so it's easy to recognize them." Chu Yang suddenly understood. At this moment, he was still on guard, but he had a good impression of the group of people in front of him. He clasped his fist and said, "I was ignorant just now. If I offended you, please forgive me." After a pause, he said to the one-armed middle-aged man, "May I know your name?" "Young man, there's no need to be so formal. After leaving the eastern wilderness and coming to our barren village, this is your home." The one-armed middle-aged man laughed and said, "If you don't mind, you can call me Uncle Hu like the others." How could Chu Yang let this go? He quickly bowed and said, "Uncle Hu. Hee, this kid knows how to climb up the ladder." He recognized an uncle so quickly. Not bad, but his uncle still doesn't know his nephew's name. The group of people joked about Chu Yang. Chu Yang clasped his fist. "Uncles, little brothers. I'm Chu Yang, nicknamed Little Sheep." Ha ha! The group of people immediately burst into laughter, especially the teenagers. They widened their eyes and felt extremely surprised. There are people who give themselves such a nickname. "Let's go, Little Sheep. Let's go back together. Your cultivation will take at least a month to recover." The one-armed middle-aged man clearly understood Chu Yang's situation very well. Chu Yang nodded and followed behind the group of people. Not long after, they saw Chu Yang covered in blood and couldn't help but ask, "Little Sheep, what happened to you? You met a beast as soon as you came out." "That's not right, I didn't see any wounds on your body." Chu Yang scratched his head. "It's a long story. I almost couldn't see you uncles and little brothers. I almost died in the spatial tunnel." Hiss! Immediately, the group of people stopped in their tracks and looked at Chu Yang in shock. Obviously, they were very familiar with Chu Yang's situation. They could imagine how serious Chu Yang's injuries were. Of course, they were most shocked that Chu Yang didn't die after the spatial tunnel collapsed. After so many years, they had never heard of anyone who came out of the eastern wilderness and survived the collapse of a spatial tunnel. The spatial tunnel to the eastern wilderness is indeed too unstable. The one-armed middle-aged man was clearly very familiar with the spatial tunnel. He said, however, "You can still escape from the spatial tunnel after it collapsed. You must be a hero in the East Continent." "Uncle Hu, you're joking. I don't want to be a hero. I just want to be a little sheep. I'll be fine as long as no one comes to eat me." Chu Yang's words made Uncle Hu and the others laugh again. Chapter 968. As Chu Yang ventured deeper into the barren village, he began to understand the place better. The people of the East Continent ostracized the people of the Eastern Wilderness. They did not even see the people of the Eastern Wilderness as human beings. Calling them aborigines was already a good term. Most people called them mongrels and treated them like dogs. Some of the people who came to the East Continent from the Eastern Wilderness could not survive in the East Continent and were unwilling to return to the Eastern Wilderness. Hence, they hid in the forest and built a village like this. For a long time, there were people from the Eastern Wilderness who came to the East Continent. However, most of them found it difficult to survive in the East Continent. Hence, they all gathered at the barren village, making it bigger and bigger. What Chu Yang saw was only a corner of the barren village. The people of the barren village, because they were ostracized by the East Continent, were extremely united. Due to their own circumstances, they were also very friendly and welcoming to the people of the Eastern Wilderness. There were many outstanding people from the Eastern Wilderness over the years. However, many of them were killed before they could become supreme beings. Only a few managed to gain a foothold in the East Continent and regain some dignity for the people of the Eastern Wilderness. Even so, the people of the Eastern Wilderness still had a very low status in the East Continent. They were even worse than slaves. Chu Yang did not feel good when he heard this. Once he left the barren village, he was afraid that anyone who saw him would look at him with disdain and call him a mongrel or a mongrel. He imagined the scene, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. There was a nirvana pond in the barren village. It was built after the ancestors of the Eastern Wilderness came to the East Continent. Hence, the people of the barren village were very clear about the process of people who came from the Eastern Wilderness to the East Continent. They heard that Chu Yang survived the collapse of the space tunnel. Hence, he was highly valued. The barren village chief came personally to take him away. At the same time, Chu Yang was temporarily staying with the village chief. The village chief of the barren village was extremely powerful. Chu Yang could not tell how powerful he was, but he estimated that he was at least in the Nirvana realm. Everyone in the village called him Sixth Uncle. In the southernmost part of the village, there was a courtyard by a pond. It was extremely peaceful. This was the courtyard where the village chief, Sixth Great Uncle, lived. After Sixth Great Uncle told Chu Yang the things he needed to pay attention to, he looked at Chu Yang and suddenly said, "I hope you can stand at the top of the world and fight for the glory of the people of the Eastern Wilderness." Chu Yang was shocked. He thought to himself, could it be that he knows my identity? He thought of the hunchback patriarch, that saint. Looking at his sixth granduncle, Chu Yang couldn't see the connection between the two. He didn't know why his sixth granduncle valued him so much. "Sixth great-uncle, your request is a bit high. I'm afraid this little sheep won't be able to do it." If it was someone he was familiar with, Chu Yang would definitely spout nonsense. However, this still depended on the situation. "You're wondering why I would say something so abrupt, aren't you?" Sixth great-uncle looked like he was reminiscing. He said, "There was once a prodigy in the Eastern Wilderness. He predicted that in 100 years, there would be a person who would lead the people of the eastern wilderness to rise in this world. At that time, no one will dare to call us natives anymore, and no one will dare to treat us like dogs. Sixth great-uncle took out a piece of ancient black jade. I know you're the master of the eastern wilderness. The moment you appeared in the East Continent, this piece of ancient jade let out a dragon's roar. It only calmed down when it saw you. He knew that too? Chu Yang was startled for a moment. Then, he asked, can I know the name of that senior? He's called the Eastern Wilderness. Chapter 969. Chu Yang's pupils constricted when he heard this. The situation of the people from the eastern wilderness in the East Continent was far worse than he had imagined. He could not imagine how his big brother had established himself in the East Continent and how he had entered the Sky Academy. Could it be that the Sky Academy was just a mediocre academy? Sixth great-uncle, how is the Sky Academy in the East Continent? Is it mediocre? Chu Yang changed the topic. The topic was too heavy, and he did not want to promise his sixth great-uncle anything. If he did, he would feel burdened. If he was looked down upon, Chu Yang would definitely retaliate. How could he swallow his anger? Sixth great-uncle did not say anything else. He put away the ancient black jade and said, "The Sky Academy is one of the top academies in the East Continent. The 6 academies in the East Continent are the Sky Academy, the Star Academy, the Sky Demon Academy, the Myriad Academy, and the Divine Knight Academy. The Sky Academy is one of the 6 major academies in the East Continent." One of the 6 major academies? Chu Yang asked again. Can people from the Eastern Wilderness enter the Sky Academy? Yes. Sixth great-uncle suddenly became excited again. He said, "The reason is because of the Eastern Wilderness. He opened a path for us people from the Eastern Wilderness to ascend." However, sixth great-uncle had only mentioned it briefly. However, Chu Yang could more or less imagine that the entire Eastern Continent discriminated against the people of the Eastern Wasteland. Even the major academies didn't accept the people of the Eastern Wasteland. So, how magnificent would it be to overturn such a situation with one person's strength? This Eastern Wilderness was extremely bold. It could be said that he was a pioneer and sage of the Eastern Wilderness. Sixth great-uncle suddenly fell silent. Chu Yang did not like this atmosphere, so he changed the topic. Then I have to thank the senior from the Eastern Wilderness. If I didn't want to enter the Sky Academy, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to do so. He said that you don't need to thank him. Even without him, no one can stop you. Sixth great-uncle paused. And he also said that you can definitely do it better than him. If you do it, the whole East Continent will have to remember this scene, and it will even be recorded in the history of the East Continent. He overstepped his boundaries, whether it's this matter or the name of the Eastern Wilderness. When sixth great-uncle apologized to Chu Yang panicked. As soon as he entered the East Continent, he felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. He originally wanted to brush it off, but when he saw sixth great-uncle's expression, he couldn't help but panic. He had no choice but to say, "Sixth great-uncle, how many people have lived in the Eastern Wilderness for 100 years? What the seniors in the Eastern Wilderness have done is only admirable. How can you say that he overstepped his boundaries? I thank you on his behalf." Sixth great-uncle was about to kneel before Chu Yang, scaring Chu Yang so much that he wanted to run away. But that was impossible. He hurriedly stopped sixth great-uncle and said, "Sir, please don't make me feel unworthy. I don't deserve it." "Screw you." Chu Yang was so angry that he wanted to chop up everyone in the East Continent. What the hell was going on? Then he quickly found an excuse and slipped away. He felt like he would go crazy if he stayed any longer. Sixth great-uncle looked at Chu Yang's back as he left, and a trace of apology appeared on his face. There was indeed a person called the Eastern Wilderness. The ancient black jade could detect people with exceptional talent in the Eastern Wilderness, but there had never been a savior of the Eastern Wilderness. Sixth great-uncle had said that to everyone recognized by the ancient jade. However, he firmly believed that there would definitely be someone in the Eastern Wilderness who would lead the Eastern Wilderness out of this predicament. If Chu Yang knew about this, how would he feel? He had no idea what would happen to others, but he felt suffocated. He had never liked to be looked up to by others. Moreover, this was completely unwarranted. This was really $#$%. Chapter 970. About a month later, the main world put a patch on Chu Yang's body. Chu Yang's cultivation returned to the peak of the 9th level of the ascending soul realm. In terms of martial souls, the genius martial soul and the fool martial soul were restored to the god martial soul and the demon martial soul. The blade martial soul and the dragon martial soul were originally illusory, but now they were completely restored. The sword martial soul was also upgraded to the 9th grade of the ascending soul realm. The path to heaven, 5-colored divine light, reincarnation, and other abilities were all restored. The 3rd transformation of the primitive martial soul, 3rd transformation of the chi soul, and 3rd transformation of the ascending soul realm were also not changed. Chu Yang's physique and powerful body were also restored. This meant that the main world approved. What Chu Yang could do in the Eastern Wilderness, he could also do in the main world. Of course, Chu Yang was not approved of. The 2 divine items, the blade crystal earth water and the sword heart heavenly fire, were completely gone. He swallowed the beast cores of the demonic beasts and obtained many demonic beasts' talents. Except for the desolate demon and the sea god, the rest of the talents were all wiped out. Discrimination, absolute discrimination. Chu Yang was thoroughly infuriated. This was basically saying that he ate all kinds of delicacies in the Eastern Wasteland, but in the origin world, he only ate shit. Also, the world of light and the world of darkness that Chu Yang created with the demon god martial soul was not restored. Because, in this way, he jumped out of the entire martial arts system and jumped out of the rules of heaven and earth. Others condensed the soul of the wheel to form a domain, but Chu Yang ridiculously created a world directly. This was definitely not allowed. If Chu Yang wanted to forcefully recover, a heavenly tribulation would immediately descend. Martial arts was fighting against the heavens, fighting against the heavens. How could it do what it said? If so, what was the need to cultivate? Just wait for birth, old age, sickness, and death. In addition, the world had patched Chu Yang's body, but that was only a patch. The rules were actually not complete. He needed to recultivate and guide the rules of heaven and earth into his body to complete all the incomplete rules of heaven and earth. Therefore, after Chu Yang's cultivation was basically restored, he still needed to recultivate and rebuild his body. This was extremely important. One day, 3rd granduncle led the way. Chu Yang and the parrot arrived at the Nirvana pond that had been constructed in the barren village. The liquid within the pond of rebirth was sparkling and translucent, and it was coiled by clouds and mist. It emitted a myriad of strands of auspicious colors, and a myriad of rays of multicolored light blossomed from it. Dense vital energy roiled within the pond, and it ceaselessly surged within the pond. Chu Yang took out the Nirvana liquid given to him by the hunchback patriarch and poured it into the Nirvana pond. 3rd great-uncle's eyes widened in shock. He recognized the Nirvana liquid. The Nirvana liquid was used by Nirvana realm martial artists when they were undergoing Nirvana. Unexpectedly, Chu Yang also had it. This meant that Chu Yang's background was very unusual. Rumble. In the sky, there was a sudden rumbling sound. It was as if the heavens had sensed that Chu Yang was about to provoke it, and had already released its pressure. Heavenly tribulation? Third great uncle looked at the thunder cloud that had already condensed above his head. His eyes widened in shock. This meant that the person he had high hopes for had already violated the rules of heaven and earth. Chu Yang raised a disdainful finger at the sky, extremely disdainful. Then, he jumped into the Nirvana pond. Will this divine bird also be struck by lightning? The parrot's liver trembled. It was somewhat unwilling to enter the Nirvana pond with Chu Yang, but it did not have the Nirvana liquid. If I die, then I die. If the heavens want to strike me, they should strike me first. This immoral person is smoking. The parrot naturally did not dare to speak its mind. It bravely jumped into the Nirvana pond. Rumble! Thunder tribulation, don't strike this divine bird. This divine bird is innocent. Chapter 971. At this moment, Chu Yang sat down cross-legged in the Nirvana pond. The dense spiritual energy immediately surged up like an ignited dynamite. The precious liquid within the pond was brilliant like nectar, and it submerged his entire body. After that, it unceasingly cleansed his body from the inside out. Auspicious light flowed as his entire body was completely wrapped up by the dense spiritual essence. At this moment, he no longer had the energy to care about the parrot. Crack! The sound of bones breaking could be heard from the beginning. Chu Yang endured the intense pain as he guided the Nirvana precious liquid to cleanse his body. While his body was emitting waves of thunder, the thunder in the sky was even more frightening. The majestic heavenly might had already descended, shaking the entire desolate village. Bang! Suddenly, a raging flame shot out from the Nirvana pond. This was the Tao fire attracted by the Nirvana liquid. The spiritual liquid inside was boiling even more. All kinds of spiritual insects and precious medicines were surging out from the boiling liquid. This was what third granduncle had put in beforehand. The Tao fire was raging. Chu Yang was completely ignited from the inside out. If he couldn't withstand it, he would immediately be burned to ashes. The parrot was also in the same state. It was as motionless as Chu Yang as it sat cross-legged in the middle, allowing the Tao fire to burn its body and spiritual essence to cleanse its body. Crack! The sound of bones breaking became more and more frequent. Chu Yang trembled as he felt incomparable pain. Under the guidance of the Nirvana liquid, a deeper level of change occurred as the laws of heaven and earth began to enter his body. The laws of the origin world were complete and the great Tao was flawless. Thus, one could cultivate to the extreme. However, in the eastern wilderness, the heavenly Tao was damaged. If one cultivated in such an environment without any accidents, it would be very difficult to reach the highest level. Although Chu Yang had been patched by heaven and earth, the heaven and earth were not his father. It would not do everything for him. The rest still needed to depend on himself. His bones broke inch by inch and reformed once again. This was bound to be an incomparably painful process. With endless crackling sounds, Chu Yang's bones broke even more violently before finally shattering completely. This scene was very terrifying. If Chu Yang didn't forcefully draw out a strand of innate essence to support his body with spiritual power, he would have turned into a pile of mud by now. Spirit energy enshrouded the pool as precious liquid gurgled. The multicolored light within the pool was like silk ribbons, and auspicious colors were like brocade clouds. Within this misty expanse, not only did Chu Yang draw support from the Nirvana elixir to guide the laws of the main world into his body and cleanse his flesh and shattered bones, he even activated his fiend god martial soul. He wanted to achieve perfection. Very quickly, the heavens and earth rumbled and the sound of scriptures could be heard. It sounded like the sound of the great Tao, but it was unknown whether it was because of the divine demon martial spirit or the Nirvana liquid. What happened? The entire village was shaken. Countless people gathered around. Sixth granduncle was also extremely shocked. He had seen many geniuses who had come to the East Continent from the Eastern Wilderness. None of them could trigger a heavenly tribulation, let alone trigger the sound of the Great Path. But now all of them had appeared in the same person. Shattering the bones, changing the marrow, changing the blood, cleansing the internal organs, skin, flesh, and so on. Every process was carried out one by one, and time passed silently. After half a month, Chu Yang's nirvana elixir was completed. After reconstructing his true body, the laws of the heavens and earth entered his body and filled up the gaps. As for the parrot, it had completed it even earlier than Chu Yang. After everything was completed, Chu Yang used another half a month to recultivate the origin martial realm, Chi Soul realm, and ascending soul realm. When he reached the soul reincarnation realm and was about to break through to the soul reincarnation realm, he suddenly opened his eyes. In the soul reincarnation realm, other people could only condense their soul reincarnation and form their own domain. Chu Yang relied on his fiend god martial soul to create a small world that defied the heavens and earth. The heavens and earth couldn't tolerate this and would definitely send down a lightning punishment to punish Chu Yang. Chu Yang had used his fiend god martial soul to calculate how powerful the heavenly tribulation would be. The answer was that he could withstand the heavenly tribulation. Begin. After everything was prepared, Chu Yang immediately began to break through to the soul reincarnation realm. Chapter 972. Rumble. 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 At that moment the sky shook and the earth trembled. The thunder was so loud that it was deafening, almost enough to shatter the mountains. The villagers were caught off guard. Many of them fell to the ground, some of them even bleeding from their ears. One could only imagine how terrifying the punishment was. It must be the sheep, it must be him. Isn't this too shocking? The moment the thunder roared, everyone in the village was certain that this was the result of Chu Yang's lightning punishment. Chu Yang had recently reconstructed his body in the Nirvana fountain. Many miraculous things had happened there. Therefore, at that moment, everyone could not help but look in that direction. However, no one dared to get close. Even the village elder and third uncle were the same. The punishment was too terrifying. The parrot did not dare to approach it either. It muttered to itself, "It's good that he's dead. Then I'll be free." Rumble. The first bolt of lightning struck. Chu Yang's body was covered by a demonic spirit that appeared and resisted it. Rumble. After that, the second bolt of lightning, the third, the fourth, the ninth bolt of lightning, all of them struck at once. Even the geniuses of the East Continent would not be able to trigger such a punishment. Who would have thought that a genius from the Eastern Wilderness would be this powerful? Even the geniuses of the East Continent would not be able to withstand such a terrifying punishment. While the villagers were in shock, third uncle was secretly praying. He has to make it through. Once he does, he won't be afraid even if the entire East Continent becomes his enemy. At that moment, third uncle truly believed that Chu Yang was the one who could lead the people of the Eastern Wilderness out of their predicament. A vast sea of lightning. The lightning was like a tide. It was incomparably blazing, and the world suddenly brightened up. Damn, this guy is so wicked. He's dead for sure. Seeing the punishment, the parrot flapped its wings and flew tens of thousands of miles away. Rumble. The lightning punishment finally descended like a heavenly river pouring down in torrent. The sound of thunder almost pierced through people's eardrums and shattered their souls. The glaring lightning filled every inch of space. The Nirvana pond of the barren village had become a world of thunder and lightning that could destroy all living things. The people of the barren village were terrified, and their hair stood on end. Even from afar they could feel how terrifying it was. It was hard to imagine just how terrifying Chu Yang was inside. They all looked in that direction without blinking. The parrot was suddenly speechless. However, when the lightning dissipated, they suddenly saw Chu Yang's figure, and couldn't help but be shocked. He actually didn't die. What made them even more shocked was that not only was Chu Yang not dead, he even raised his head to the sky and cursed loudly. #yen%, #yen%. Chu Yang's three-character classic rendered the villagers speechless. At the same time, they were shocked by Chu Yang's prowess. If it were them, they would most likely be dead after being struck by a single bolt of lightning. Yet, he had actually withstood the 9 bolts of lightning that had struck him. The parrot was also cursing the three-character classic, "Wicked, you didn't die even after that. You are indeed worthy of being able to suppress me." Rumble. Chu Yang's three-character classic seemed to have angered the heavens. Another wave of lightning fell and drowned him. There was nothing in the Nirvana pond except for the raging lightning. Rumble. However, to everyone's horror, the lightning punishment didn't stop. Muffled thunder rumbled in the sky, continuously accumulating power for the next lightning punishment. The people of the barren village lost their voices. There were already 10 lightning punishments. The parrot was really worried now. Plop! Suddenly, there was a movement in the Nirvana pond. Ripples appeared on the surface, accompanied by the sound of water. The parrot saw a human-shaped charcoal emerge from the water. It immediately cried out, "Wicked, that's enough. If this continues, you're really going to die." However, the parrot suddenly realized that Chu Yang wasn't emitting any fluctuation of consciousness. His charred body seemed to be a corpse. It seemed as if there was no spirit left in it. Everything had been completely destroyed and annihilated by the thunderbolts. Chapter 973. This immoral guy is really playing with eggs? The parrot was stunned. After that, it flew over and landed on Chu Yang's shoulder. Just as it was about to preach the three-character classic in Chu Yang's ear, a voice suddenly appeared in its heart. "The Lord is the Lord of heaven and earth, the Lord of gods and devils, the Lord of darkness, the Lord of light, the Lord of all things, the Creator of all things, the Creator of order, the Controller of all things. If there is darkness, then darkness is everywhere. If there is light, then there is light. If there is karma, then there is karma. If there is retribution, then there is reincarnation. If there is heaven, then there is hell. The Lord is omnipotent." It wasn't just the parrot. Sixth uncle, everyone in the barren village, and all living things within 5 kilometers of the barren village heard the voice. This was an incomparably ancient language, and even more so a supreme syllable. It carried tremendous power, and all creatures who heard this voice would prostrate themselves. Darkness, the Dark Kingdom. All of a sudden, the world suddenly darkened. It was pitch black. At that moment, all living beings lost all of their senses and sank into darkness. However, it only lasted for a moment before disappearing. When the parrot saw Chu Yang again, it saw that a sphere of darkness had appeared in Chu Yang's hand. It was a boundless world of darkness. Light, the kingdom of light. The ancient and noble language rang out once again. This time, the living beings who heard the voice immediately fell into an endless light. The light in their minds shone brightly, but it only lasted for an instant before disappearing. The parrot felt the same way. In the instant that the radiance within its spiritual world vanished, another sphere of radiance appeared in Chu Yang's other hand. It was a world of boundless radiance. Is he really the Lord? Eternal life. The moment the ancient language rang out again, Chu Yang's charcoal-like body immediately turned as black as ink, as if he were a human-shaped black hole, sucking in the essence of heaven and earth. At this moment, streaks of divine radiance appeared in the void and poured into his body like flowing water. In an instant Chu Yang recovered. Every cell and piece of flesh on his body was sacred and noble. At this moment, divine inscriptions and demonic inscriptions were intertwining on his body. The divine inscriptions and demonic inscriptions resonated out at the same time. His skin, flesh, tendons, and bones began to emit light. It was as if they were reborn, appearing in this world. At the same time, they blossomed with divine radiance and evil demonic light. The divine light and demonic light intertwined to form a strange rainbow. It seemed to be the rainbow of heaven's redemption, but it was also the rainbow of hell's fall. At that very moment, the world seemed to have sensed everything that had happened to Chu Yang. It also sensed the birth of a powerful existence. Immediately, the power generated by the rules of the world became even stronger, and the air trembled. Rumble! Heaven and earth shook and thunder fell. This time, it wasn't a sea of lightning, but rather 8 living beings that were born from the lightning. These 8 living beings were like 8 gods. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, and light appeared on their bodies in order. Everyone was shocked. Is the heavens going to send down 8 deities to punish Chu Yang? Chapter 974. Boom! While everyone was still in shock, the first living being descended from the heavens. There was no sound. It was like a ray of light, descending from the heavens and entering Chu Yang's world of light. Then came the second living being, the third, the fourth, the third, the fourth. The godlike figures rushed down one by one, but in the end they all entered Chu Yang's world of light and appeared in it, shining brightly. Originally, the world of light only contained light, but now the elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and thunder were all present. It seemed to have become the realm of the gods, and all 8 of the gods were present. The parrot was speechless. Was this really a free meal? Rumble! There was another tremor, and another 8 creatures appeared in the sky. They were surging with devil energy, and they seemed to be 8 demon lords. However, just like the previous 8 god spirits, these 8 demon lords all disappeared into the dark kingdom in Chu Yang's hand. Gods and demons as one. At this moment, it seemed like the world of the gods and the world of the demons had merged. There was an explosion of endless light, and everything became invisible. It was as if after the two merged, all living things in the world were not qualified to watch. At the same time, in the endless light, the ancient voice spoke again. Sleep, forget. The moment the voice spoke, the villagers of the barren village began to snore. The parrot's eyelids became heavier and heavier, and finally, it fell into a deep sleep. The village chief, 6th uncle, tried his best to resist. He felt that he should be able to, but in the end, he gave up. If Chu Yang did not want him to know, then he would not know. He also had a feeling that even if he could resist, it would only lead to an even more terrible storm, which would forcibly erase his memory. This child should be the hope of the people of the eastern wilderness. With this thought in mind, 6th great-uncle fell into a deep sleep. However, everyone didn't sleep for long. When the light dissipated, a misty world flew into the space between Chu Yang's eyebrows. Everyone immediately woke up again. This wicked person is recultivating his body in the nirvana pool. What is there to see? And the truth is that this divine bird actually fell asleep while watching. The parrot had completely forgotten what had happened before. Lightning struck Chu Yang, that wicked man. He didn't even remember such an interesting thing. Why am I here? Among the villagers of the barren village, there were many who voiced the same opinion. However, when they looked at Chu Yang in the nirvana pond, there was an inexplicable sense of awe in their hearts. It was as if they were afraid of disturbing Chu Yang's cultivation. Their voices immediately disappeared and they silently retreated. 6th great-uncle's eyes suddenly flashed as he stared at Chu Yang, who was in the nirvana pond. He sensed that something extraordinary must have happened before. After observing for a while, he couldn't see anything from Chu Yang's body. At this moment, Chu Yang's life aura was condensed at one point. He was motionless as if he was dead. About 2 months later, the sound of bells rang throughout the entire village. Wicked man, why don't you wake up? The parrot fluttered its wings and flew over. However, as soon as it opened its mouth, its voice was completely rebounded. It was shocked. When it looked over, it was shocked to see that Chu Yang was surrounded by an invisible shield of light. Domain. The parrot trembled, then cursed, "Do you have to go too far?" Even my voice was rebounded. Buzz. Chapter 975. The parrot instantly fell into a great crisis. In the spiritual world, it fought with the two-winged beings for a long time. It seemed that countless years had passed before it finally won. It was extremely tired. It was extremely angry. Wicked, do you think you're the only one with a domain? Don't this divine bird have a domain? With a light buzzing sound, it immediately released its own domain. However, it felt as if its domain had a life of its own. It actually revealed a feeling of fear. It was trembling in front of Chu Yang's domain. The parrot immediately felt that its domain was like a bird's nest made of mud. However, Chu Yang's domain was like an emperor's palace, grand, solemn, and noble. After comparing the two, the parrot immediately lost its spirit and hung its head dejectedly. This was too much of a blow to the bird. They were both domains, so there could be a difference, but how could it not be so big? Wicked, wake up. We're going to the Sky Academy to find your wife. If you don't wake up now, you won't make it in time. The bell of the deserted village was to gather the heroes of the deserted village to go to the Sky Academy. There was a transmission array in the deserted village that led directly to the Sky Academy. It was opened once a year. Chu Yang and the parrot had stayed in the deserted village for almost 3 months. This year, they made it in time. The deserted village had such an event every year, but very few people were willing to go to the Sky Academy. In the last 3 years, no one was willing to go. The reason was actually very simple. They were too ostracized in the Sky Academy. Even if the Sky Academy was willing to accept them, they couldn't stay. The parrot called a few more times, but Chu Yang still didn't wake up. When it was about to leave, pop! A ripple appeared in the void. The parrot saw Chu Yang open his eyes at this moment. Then, it fell into darkness as soon as it met Chu Yang's gaze. Fortunately, the darkness disappeared immediately. Then, a bright light shone, and the exhaustion of its spirit disappeared. The parrot was shocked. It poked its own domain with its wings and said flatteringly, "Master, you're omnipotent. In order to not embarrass you, please see if you can modify this trashy parrot's domain." Little bastard, you still know that you're trash. The parrot gaped in shock. This was the first time in 3 months that Chu Yang had regained his humanity. Previously, Chu Yang had used the divine devil martial spirit and entered an unconscious state. Everything was guided by the martial spirit, just like the genius martial spirit and the fool martial spirit. Chu Yang had given everything to the martial spirit and then went to sleep. While speaking, Chu Yang flicked his finger. 2 rays of light, one white and one dark, shot into the parrot's domain. In an instant, the parrot's domain started to spin. A light parrot and a dark parrot appeared behind it. The 2 parrots made the parrot feel as if they were its clones. Both of them had wings. The parrot immediately realized that they were of the same origin as the 2 winged beings that had intruded into its spiritual world. This is little bitch number 2, and this is little bitch number 3. The parrot was speechless when Chu Yang named them. It felt that it had to beat around the bush in the future to improve Chu Yang's naming skills. Such lofty names should at least be called Big Bitch number 2 and Big Bitch number 3. How could he call them Little Bitch? However, it had a flattering look on its face as it shouted, "Master is wise. Master is a heavenly martial artist. Come, let's go to the Sky Courtyard." Chu Yang chatted with the parrot for a while before leaving with it. Actually, Chu Yang had sensed the arrival of the parrot. In fact, he could sense everything that was happening in the village. He knew everything like the back of his hand. 7 days ago, he had completely awakened. He was just feeling his body. At the teleportation array, Chu Yang met his sixth granduncle. However, there were only 3 people beside him: Cui Xinho, Hao Haodong, and Olizheng. The 3 of them were around 20 years old and were at the 9th level of the Soul Wheel realm. They weren't willing to go to the Sky Courtyard, but they had no choice under the pressure of his 6th granduncle. I'll leave the 3 of them to you. I believe that no one in the Sky Courtyard can make things difficult for you. It shouldn't be a problem for the 3 of them to gain a foothold. As soon as his 6th granduncle spoke, Chu Yang's head started to hurt. Here it comes again. In particular, Chu Yang couldn't stand the way his 6th granduncle looked at him with great hope. 6th granduncle, I'll do my best. After his 6th granduncle told him what to pay attention to in the entrance examination of the Sky Courtyard, Chu Yang stepped into the teleportation array with Cui Xinho. Chapter 976. After a moment of stellar transposition, the space around Chu Yang stabilized. Looking around, he saw a vast plain spread out in front of him. It was so vast that he couldn't even see the end of it. The most shocking thing was that this plain was not a grassland, nor was it a desert. Instead, it was an extremely huge habitat for humans. On this boundless plain, countless houses rose up one after another. Many of them were as big as mountains. There were even some buildings that undulated up and down like mountains. It was extremely grand and magnificent. On the plains, there were over a dozen surging rivers that provided water for the huge plains. An extremely huge formation had been constructed on the boundless plains, forming a protective barrier that protected the entire plains. Above the firmament, there was a circulation path of a formation, and an extremely complicated pattern appeared on it. Chu Yang could tell that it was a spell formation of the 10th rank. Chu Yang was only a 5th rank spell formation master, so although he could sense the vastness of the spell formation, he couldn't tell how it operated. Because of that, although his horizons were broadened, he couldn't help but feel a bit shaken. It wasn't easy to make a name for yourself in a place like this. No wonder that so-called Qian child was so strong. He was able to get his hands on the essence of a dimensional world like this. It's no wonder that eldest brother was defeated in the Heaven Academy. Chu Yang's mind was struck by the magnificence and vastness of this place. The eastern wasteland where he was originally from was really too weak. Although he had felt it the moment he entered the East Continent, when he saw such a boundless and huge plain, his understanding of it became even more profound and unforgettable. This plain was more than 10 times larger than the eastern wilderness. In the southernmost part of the plain, where Chu Yang was at the moment, there was a building complex that stretched for hundreds of miles. It was classical, magnificent, and majestic. Just by looking at it, one could feel an ancient aura assaulting one's senses. It filled one's nerves and made one feel awestruck. This enormous structure, which stretched for hundreds of kilometers, was none other than the location of the Demi-Immortal Institute. Floating in the air above it was an enormous city that almost looked like an entire continent. That was how the Heaven Academy got its name. How magnificent! As soon as the parrot caught sight of the Demi-Immortal Institute, it began to blink, looking here and there like a true parrot from the countryside. As far as the eye could see, there was an endless stream of people, carriages, and people everywhere, day and night. At this moment, Chu Yang seemed to be able to imagine the night scene here. Brilliant lights, fiery trees, silver flowers, it would definitely be very beautiful. He was incomparably shocked. Even in his previous life, there was absolutely no city that could compare to this. However, in contrast to the excitement of Chu Yang and the parrot, Cui Xinho, Hao Haodong, and Olizheng looked like chickens suffering from the plague. They couldn't arouse even the slightest bit of interest. Their heads hung low in dejection, as if the vast expanse in front of them was a living hell filled with endless pain. After Chu Yang realized this, his expression couldn't help but become slightly gloomy. These three people were turning a blind eye to everything in front of them. It was likely that they had been here and seen it before. Presumably, their experience here was not only bitter, but also dark. In fact, it could even be described as a nightmare. Hey, can you at least show some of the aura of the Eastern Wilderness? Look at you. It's not just the people from the East Continent who despise you. Even I despise you. Chapter 977. If the three of you continue to act like this and embarrass me, then you can go back now. Chu Yang was not polite to them. No matter how strong the enemy was, if they could move a finger, they would still poke him. Even though Chu Yang was a loyal believer of pessimism, he did not like this kind of spirit. Wait, I hope you can still say such arrogant words. Cui Xinho retorted back at Chu Yang, his tone sharper and his expression more mocking. I, the Almighty Lord, with the blessings of the gods, grant me great power to lead you three plague chickens to the light. Chu Yang stood up straight. Holy hymns began to sing from his body, and an incomparably holy light burst forth. Vigorous spiritual energy surged out, forming a pair of wings on his back. Thunder patterns appeared on the wings. Within the patterns there were gods, demons, countless angels and countless demons. However, they quickly disappeared and were completely hidden. Chu Yang did not want to reveal the wings of light and dark, so he used thunder to cover it up. At this moment, he released an aura that Chu Yi could control. His skin was white and translucent, and his pores were delicate and flawless. It was as if he was carved out of crystal. The noble aura on Chu Yang's body made Cui Xinho and the other two's hearts flutter. They could not help but tremble violently. I now give you two choices. First, go back home and continue to live out the rest of your lives in the barren village. Second, try to trust me and follow my orders. Which one do you choose? The parrot looked at the three, but it did not cackle. It was also very uneasy. The stories it had heard in the barren village were too tragic. As for the so-called Baron Qi, the parrot had also tried to get rid of it, but without exception it had not succeeded. I'd like to see what you're capable of. Cui Xinho was provoked by Chu Yang, and could not help but grit his teeth. Seeing him like this, Chu Yang finally understood why his sixth granduncle kept having such high hopes for him. If the old man did not have such high hopes, the people of the barren village would have lost their spirit. You will see. Chu Yang hadn't even seen the people from the East Continent, but he was already in a bad mood. Glaring at the parrot, he said, "You little bitch, why don't you just walk your own bird's path and let the other birds talk? If you continue to embarrass me like this, I'll roast you and eat you." Yes, Almighty Lord. Little scum, turn over a new leaf. Make a king of disdain. Chu Yang requested, and the parrot immediately squinted its eyes. Is this the disdain of a king? What kind of look is that when you look at a maggot in a cesspool? Chu Yang paused and immediately corrected himself. You're a bird. When you see maggots in the manure pit, you'll definitely be excited immediately. Forget it, I understand you. The parrot couldn't take it anymore. Lord, this is discrimination. Typical discrimination. I protest. Protest my ass. Look at you now. You haven't even seen the two-legged dogs from the East Continent. Look at how scared you are. While speaking, Chu Yang grabbed Cui Xinho and the other two and flew away. When they were about to reach the Sky Academy, they landed and completely concealed their aura, making him look like an ordinary person in an instant. After a while, they arrived at the entrance of the Sky Academy. There were layers upon layers of tall, temple-like buildings. At a glance, they could not see the end of them. Every building was extremely solemn and dignified. This was the place where the Sky Academy recruited students. Chu Yang's destination was here twice a year. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.